And I'm looking down, and I look at Lawrence, and I look down, and I said, Lawrence, the deer I shot at was a lot bigger than that. Well, that's funny. Your arrow sticking in him.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there that helps the metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 207. As Nick for sure kept us in line today. I forgot it, and you told me 30 seconds ago. 207. It is September 26th. If you're listening to this, it's October. 3rd. Holy cow. Freaking October. That's insane to think about. I can't believe it.
Sorry.
September kind of just blew by.
Yeah, dude, September sucked. I think...
When we talked last night, you were in a funk. When it gets hot and dry, you're like a farmer.
Like the soul of a farmer, man. I just can't be happy when it's dry. I hate it.
Yeah, only things growing is weeds.
Things are dying, and just like all that, that work that you put in to get plots planted and stuff, and it's like even just the natural habitat. Just my soul feels dry and crusty. But that rain is like finally, some moisture hits the lips there. So
once it hits the lips,
I'm coming out of it. I was for sure. I was like almost like feeling like I needed to apologize to people. I'm like, sorry, I'm just like not myself now. So
it was pretty miserable there for a while. I mean, when you're talking like not just dry, but like drought conditions, tack that on. Like I just spent a couple of days in the Midwest, and like everybody I talked to were like, yep, all the deer are dead. They're all dying from EHD, like just getting smoked left and right. Yeah. It was like, is it that bad? I mean, I was in Clark County, Illinois, so central Illinois, and they have like some kayak or
East Central or Central?
East Central.
Okay.
And they have some like kayak or canoe trip down like one of the Wabash River or whatever that's right there on the Indiana border, and it like got canceled because there's like so many dead deer floating around.
Wow. Is that where we heard some of those initial reports?
Yeah, like a long time ago.
Yeah, like almost a month ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I sent you this morning. I don't know what part of it, if it's like bonus stuff or whatever, but there's some harvest bag limit adjustments starting to happen in Indiana because of it.
Well, I commend them for that. I mean, for sure. I mean, it's like as much as you hate to see restrictions put on stuff. I mean, it's like you gotta protect the herd, what's left of it, in certain areas. So
pretty wild, man. I mean, I saw Huntsucker lost his number 1 in Missouri.
Saw that,
we talked to a bunch of guys in Columbus, Ohio, getting smoked. Like giants dying left and right.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, when you talk about like kind of that depression you get into, it's for good reason. There's a lot of things that happen that are not great.
Yeah, well, there's that too. I mean, it's just a lot of things can go wrong at any time, but I mean, especially, it just seems like there's that last hump to get over, and sometimes it just kicks you right in the nads, right when you're thought you made it through there. But
now we've got this, I'm sure at this point it's all passed through, but this Helene hurricane, which if you're down on the Florida, like Big Bend Panhandle, I mean, I'm sure you guys went through some rough stuff here recently, and a lot of flooding, it sounds like, going up into the Appalachians and stuff. So
I think it's Helena. Is that my MCR or something you're talking about?
It is Helena.
Yeah.
So again, we talk about like, man, all those places like West Virginia was like maybe as worse of a drought as any other place. And like now they're going to get 8 to 10 inches of rain. It's like too much at this point, like, and too late.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, just the extremes back and forth and the EHD and, you know, but all that said, we're into October. I mean, the next 60 days, I don't think there's any better time of the year for a deer hunter.
We have to, like, and this is more advice for myself than for anybody else, but we should just, like, take a deep breath here.
Slow down. Got to slow down.
Take a deep breath here. Like, let that stress.
Nobody panic.
Pass.
Nobody freak out.
Because you could be stressed and like, well, what am I going to do opening day and this and that? Like, probably right now, probably today, as you're listening to this, would be the time to take a deep breath and just like, you know, if there's deer that died, hey, they died, and that's that, and like, it's here now. You know what I mean? It's got time to pick up the pieces and like make the most of what's here. So it's a long season. A lot can happen. Probably one of the best things that you can have going into it is just a positive mindset of it's a marathon and not a sprint, and anything can happen. And
well, I mean,
it's
like,
going to be a good season.
You have yours over there somewhere, but like
that's for me.
We just released our make deer hunting great again shirt and had a lot of positive response on that.
I'll hold
and
this
that,
up for people.
Yeah, man, it's just like it's the best time of the year. You know, that in itself kind of.
Who drew this?
Dustin DiTilio, art. Yeah. So
very cool.
Dustin did a great job with it. And, so, I mean, it's just, you know, a good reminder, you know, not just that merch, but just at this point, a good reminder that, man, we look forward to this time year round. Like, slow down, try to enjoy it. There are going to be obstacles, weather, whatever, pressure, access. Just enjoy it. Next 60 days, because 60 days from now, we're all going to say, well, shit. Now what?
Yeah. Well, it starts over again. But yeah, this is the time, you know, to intentionally slow it down and get every drop out of it. So
yep. Well, we got a cool guest today. I brought out the old school team Realtree hat for it.
Yeah.
So
suck up.
See that? Huh? Yeah. Got to play your cards right. Actually, Tyler sent this to us. So, but we got David Blanton on, which is gonna be freaking awesome. So, you know, I'm sure. Probably a no introduction needed for a lot of people listening, but you know, I would say, you know, David's one of the guys that like most of us grew up watching, you know, on Realtree, and you know, in fact, it was funny. I think it was 2 days ago or something. I watched, might have been before your time. You remember the incomplete deer hunter stuff from Jeff Foxworthy?
Mm-hmm. Barely, but yeah.
I watched a clip with David and I was freaking dying because, like, I remember watching like that on VHS or whatever back in the day, and you know, it was one of those things at deer camp like we watched all the time, and it was just freaking hilarious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, David just was in that era of like, you know, a lot of people might say like the pinnacle of like the hunting industry and just of like what is monster bucks and Realtree and like just that era that like I was growing up through, you know, but you know, a lot of guys were living through, you know, and it's like, man, you just envy that time and like have a lot of respect for those guys that were a part of, I mean, him and Waddell and like the Primos and like, you know, run down the list of some of those kind of like iconic figures. And David's super humble about it, so he'll never admit that he's one of those guys, but he is, you know?
I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's like, man, I remember those nights growing up in high school and stuff, and my dad and I sitting down on a Sunday night and putting TNN on and watching Realtree Outdoors with David and Michael and Bill. Like that's what we watch. Like that's what it was. He's
also one of those guys I kind of was joking about earlier, but he's just, you feel like you know him before you. I'm like, did I meet? I was like, did we actually? And I probably did meet him at a trade show at some point, but I'm like, I feel like I know you. You know, even before we get talking here. So that's a super, whatever you call, admirable quality that most people should strive to have. So there's a compliment for David there.
Yeah. So again, honored to have him on, and let's bring David in. All right, David, we got you.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. Yeah, sorry, we kind of get into the weeds there a bit.
No, that's actually entertaining to me.
David, I've toyed with the idea of, like you asked earlier, how long are we gonna be on? I've toyed with the idea of just being like, oh, you know, an hour, and then, but I know it's gonna go 2 or 3. But then if you have a commitment, you know, then we're screwed out of that. So I don't know what the right way to go with it is.
Oh, no. I'm good. Like it's an honor to be on with you guys. And I have to say, I kind of like the scruff a little bit.
You can even through the screen, you can see that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
Yeah. He's like, listen, Margie, David Blanton told me that I need to grow this thing out.
Well, it's coming on then, I guess. So it has been a rut stash in the past, but we'll just let her go. The No Shave November starts early this year.
Yeah. Well, I talked about it. We were getting like the kids like Halloween costumes and stuff the other day. And I think I've made the commitment that I'm just going to just grow out whatever I have. And then for Halloween, I'm going to shave the stash and go for like a Dale Earnhardt type of look.
There you go.
Because then you just go right into the rut after that.
Well,
like,
it's a fact that mustaches do kill bucks. I mean, that's proven.
It's proven.
That's science. It's science.
It's science. Well, David, man, we appreciate you coming on this morning. And so are you in Georgia?
I am. I live in LaGrange, Georgia, which is 50 miles north of Columbus, where our offices at Realtree are. I commute back and forth when I'm in the office.
Gotcha. And are you born and raised Georgia?
I was actually born in South Carolina, but I feel like I was raised in Southeast Georgia near the Okefenokee Swamp when my dad got transferred down there in his work when I was 14. So that's where I was actually introduced into hunting as a 14-year-old. So I kind of got started late in life hunting. I didn't grow up hunting in South Carolina. We grew up as a sports family, football, baseball, basketball. That's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But when my dad got transferred to South Georgia, hunting is a way of life down there in a lot of places in Georgia. And that's really where I feel like I was raised. And that's where obviously I was introduced to hunting, and it was amazing.
And was it, so you didn't grow up in a hunting family. When you moved down there, did your dad pick it up too? Like as a family, did you start to adopt that?
That's a great question. And no, he did not. As a matter of fact, he did with me. But the way we got interested in this is my older brother, Dennis. He's 2.5 years older than me. He was always interested in artifacts, looking for arrowheads, pottery. Even in South Carolina, he was always interested in looking for artifacts. Didn't think anything about it. We moved to South Georgia, and he's just full on board, finding more artifacts and pottery and arrowheads and all this. And the next thing you know, he asked for Christmas, because he would have been 16 at the time. He asked for a bow and arrow set for Christmas, a recurve.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, compounds weren't even legal. But so he got a bow and arrow and started shooting in the backyard. And my dad and I were both so intrigued by this, and we'd already met people down there that their whole life was hunting. So Dennis gets a bow and arrow, and within 6 months, my dad and I both got recurves. I still have to this day the first bow I ever owned. It's in my Realtree. It's a Bear 76er recurve, because it came out in 1976.
Wow!
It was red, white, and blue. A fiberglass takedown recurve. And I would put the camo sleeves on it that you could buy, the woodland camo sleeves. Yep. And that's what I first shot, and I still have that bow. It's amazing, and that I was able to keep up with it, because through the years, some people borrowed it, and I, over the years, and I got it back, and so we all kind of learned how to bow hunt together. That's what we did, and it was a comedy of errors, let me tell you, because back then, you couldn't gain information on deer hunting like we can now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were no TV shows. There were no videos. There weren't many magazines. There was only 3 magazines: Sports and Field, Outdoor Life, and Field and Stream. And the only time they really went heavy on deer hunting would be like an October issue. They would do like a 10-page pull-out section on deer hunting. All you need to know about deer hunting. And I would just, I don't know, I was just bitten by the bug of hunting, and that was my beginning of deer hunting.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
What in that time frame, I guess, David, like what was the deer population and stuff like down there? Like, I mean, were you seeing deer even like kind of before you're hunting? Like once you moved down there, you're like, oh, there's deer in this field, or I saw deer when I was in the woods.
No, as a matter of fact, there were very, very few deer down there. And we didn't even have access. There was hardly any deer around where we live, but we could drive an hour and a half up towards Savannah, Georgia, there's a military base, Fort Stewart.
Yep.
Very, very large military base. And they allowed hunting in certain areas, depending on what they had going on. We would go up there and camp and check in, first come, first serve, certain areas. And we would camp. I mean, we would check in and we could hunt a certain area. Luckily, it just wasn't one of the areas they were dropping bombs in that day, you know. But that's where we we knew nothing. All I knew is what I had learned looking at pictures and drawings in outdoor life was what a deer track looked like, or what a buck track looked like versus a doe track, and what a scrape on the ground looked like. This is through drawings, and that's how limited the information was. But we were so. I honestly, I think back, going, why were we so committed at that point? Being very fair, why were we so dedicated to this sport when apparently there was no obvious upside?
Right.
I mean, there wasn't like now you got deer everywhere and you see these big deer in the fields late in the evenings in the summertime. No, it's none of that. So we bow hunted only, and that's all we did. And matter of fact, I'll never forget the first time I ever saw a deer while I was in my homemade climbing stand. A lot of people don't even know this, but the old climbing stands where you had the platform you hooked around the tree, and you would grab the tree, pull your feet in, grab the tree, pull your feet up, lock it in. That's what we used to hunt out of. And I'll never forget, my dad and I were hunting together, and we were on Fort Stewart. And I think we'd been 3 or 4 times. I had not seen a deer yet and was not discouraged at all. I'm sitting up there and I catch movement a couple hundred yards off. And my first thought was, what are those dogs doing back here on this military base? Why are there dogs back here? And then I realized that it wasn't dogs, it was 3 does. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe my eyes that I was watching these 3 does, and they were coming towards me. And at that point, I semi-blacked out. I don't remember them getting close. Like I don't remember standing up. I don't remember grabbing my bow. And of course, we just held it in your lap the whole time. There was no such thing as an easy hanger.
Yep.
I don't remember coming to full draw. I don't remember letting the arrow go, but I do remember the arrow flying about 2 feet over this doe's back. Oh yeah. And they ran off. And I'm telling you, boys, that's the first time I've ever been hit with, and I didn't know it existed, a severe case of buck fever or doe fever or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
I started shaking so bad that I had to sit down so I wouldn't fall out of the tree. I literally had to sit down. I could not catch my breath. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't believe I just shot an arrow at a deer. It didn't come close to hitting her. But that was an unbelievable moment in my life. I remember that to this day. It was incredible.
Yeah. What a wild feeling. You know, you talk about the kind of like, I don't know, just underneath drive of why you're so hooked. And, you know, you mentioned being a sports family. And I think, you know, when we talk about that, and I remember kind of mine similar, I was very sports oriented growing up. You know, and sports is a lot about external competition, but it's also a lot about the internal competition to continue to make yourself better. And I think growing up, like, you know, I don't want to say it's easy now, but when you start looking at that, even when I grew up hunting in the 90s when deer populations were at all-time highs, like it's still in Pennsylvania was not, I was looking for a buck with a 3-inch spike on one side, right? And when I go back to all of the like effort and time and stuff that I put into place there, you know, it is very relatable to like how I trained for basketball or football or track and field or whatever it was. And I think that those mindsets just, they merge so well, even though at the time we probably don't realize it.
Well, let me tell you, I think back now in those mid 70s, when, like I said, this was a year or two before they legalized compounds in Georgia. going up there, some of the most precious memories I have. There's also some barrier islands off the coast of Georgia that they would hold these bow hunts on, like Blackbeard Island, Sapelo Island, Cumberland Island. And you had to kind of get drawn back then to go. And we went to Blackbeard Island during these early years, and I hadn't killed a deer. But one of my most precious memories is going over there with my dad, my brother, and some friends of my dad's and camping out and hunting.
Yeah.
We didn't kill a deer, but it was incredible. It was awesome. Like I relish those as much as any memory I have in hunting. And all we did was bow hunt. Now, when compounds got legal a couple of years later, when I was in high school, my first compound was a bear whitetail hunter. It had more cables and wheels and pulleys on it than a solo flex machine. I'm telling you, it was probably the best selling compound right out of the gate. And but we just kept bow hunting, and we started learning more and more. But I would soak in every piece of information I could get my hands on in just those 3 magazines. Like I said, there were no other magazines. There were obviously there were no TV shows, but there were no videos. There was nothing. And it was all like, there's a deer track. Should I climb this tree right here? There's one morning, my dad and I were walking in, shining a flashlight on this mud hole on this dirt road, and there were deer tracks in this mud hole. We climbed the pine tree right there.
This is it.
We made her.
I didn't know what else to do. Like I didn't know. I mean, we didn't know.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is funny to think back to that, but I think in that same time frame, we talk about it a lot on here, David, as we get into like what we have now from modern technology and scouting and information. Man, those days of just getting out there and legging areas and looking for sign and reading sign, and even if you were just doing it from a whitetail hunting standpoint, the other things that you saw, whether it was flushing quail or grouse or, seeing your first bear track or whatever it was, like those experiences out there and that ability to just kind of teach yourself as you're going through, man, I think was some of the most valuable lessons that most hunters have ever learned in their entire life.
Oh, listen, I remember, and this is Alma, Georgia, Bacon County. I remember having the bug so bad that our home was across US 1, Highway 1, and across the highway back in there was our rec center, our rec department, all our just a few ball fields, baseball fields.
Yep.
Behind the baseball fields was a creek, Hurricane Creek. And I thought to myself one day, there has to be deer back there. I'd never seen any deer back there, but there has to be deer. So I started taking my climbing stand, walking across US Highway 1, walking back in there through a few houses, neighborhood, behind the soft baseball fields and climbing. And I actually saw a buck one day. I couldn't believe it. So I took my dad back there one morning, and we were walking back home. It was a Saturday morning. We were walking back home, and we were just about to get to some houses and some yards, and I looked down, and all I could see in front of me, it was a cooler morning, and all I could see on the ground in front of me were diamonds. I couldn't see the head of the snake, and I couldn't see the tail. It was the biggest eastern diamondback rattlesnake I'd ever seen in my life. And so we backed up, and about that time it coils up, and this thing is gigantic. These eastern diamondback snakes in South Georgia are huge.
Yeah.
This snake, we shot the snake and killed the snake, but he was over 6 feet long, probably that big around. It was like one of the most incredible, just like that. It was just unbelievable.
Wow.
But that was how we were just hunting. We were just going outside, climbing trees, and saw a deer. I mean, I bow hunted for 6 years before I killed a deer.
Yeah.
Man,
and never lost any enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That's David's story about the buck fever with the does. Like I think you and I for sure that resonates with, and I gotta believe like almost everybody's had a similar experience where it's like it may not have even been that. In hindsight, it's like, you know, what did I get so worked up about? But it's like it's kind of perplexing to consider. You're like, what is that thing that either deer have or that is in us that causes that kind of reaction?
Well, it's insane.
And and you may not know it like right away, like when David, when you had that experience, and like, you know, like I said, we've had some of our own, and it's just like later on, I think you kind of piece together and figure out, you're like, oh, well, this is just, I'm a deer hunter. Like this is a thing that's in me, and that is what triggers it.
I mean, I thought the first time that I experienced it, because it was probably late October or something like that, bow hunting in Pennsylvania, I thought I was cold. Like I thought I was shivering out. Like, I don't know. I thought I was sick or something. Like I vividly remember my dad had built like a 6 foot like lean-to stand that was leaning against his tree. I probably was wide open, right, sitting on a 5-gallon bucket, right. That's what
you do.
You know, I had my first compound that I used was an old Indian bow, and so I'm sitting there, and this doe and this button buck come out, and they're eating in the soybean field, right. And my dad still tells the story better than I do any day of the week, but he said he's like sitting across, and he's like, okay, like these deer are like right there. And he said he'd hear like dunk, like my arrow just going through the soybean. And I shot 3 times before I actually hit this thing. And the whole time he's like, man, I can't believe these deer sit. And that button buck ended up doing a circle and then just fell over. Like I killed it. And, you know, at that time, I remember him like running across the field. I didn't know what to do. Like, you know, now that I shot a deer and it laid down. I was 13, but I remember shivering like uncontrollably, and it was like I didn't know what was wrong with me. I could not stop doing it. It was everything willpower trying to get like your legs to stop. It's literally, you know, your knees are chattering, and it's just, yeah, it's a wild feeling.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a doctor could probably diagnose it, but, you know, medically, I'm sure it has something to do with adrenaline and this or that. But like, there's a connection of like synapses in your brain, and certain ones of us, I think, are especially wired for. But there's also the primal. And I knew as soon as David started getting into this, I was like, I'm going to get a wet eye at some point here in this podcast. It's just like, it's who you are. It's part of your identity. It's somehow in your DNA, and that specific encounter, or like that situation, it just like it ignites. And over time, I think you can realize it and start to figure out, you're like, I'm a bow hunter. I'm like, I was made for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you spend the rest of your life chasing that feeling, you know?
Well, I tell you this, the strongest case of that I ever had was not as strong as the doe was, the first deer I ever shot at, as strong as that was, the most amazing episode of that I ever had, and I've had several, was the first time I tried to draw my bow on a bull elk.
Mm.
And Michael Waddell was a cameraman for us then. This is before road trips. Michael was running camera. We were in New Mexico, and this bull elk is bugling, and we're calling this bull elk right to us. He gets up behind some brush 30 yards from me, and I go to pull my bow back, and I literally could not pull my bow. I could not get my bow drawn. I tried and tried and tried, and I never did get the strength to pull my bow back.
Yep.
That's how the adrenaline dump was, or whatever it was. I literally could not pull my bow back. Now, I would like to say finally I did, but no, I never did.
Yep.
And the bull spooked and ran off, and I'm sitting there going, I pulled this bow back thousands of times with no problem whatsoever, and I literally couldn't pull my bow back.
Yep. Yeah. I remember doing that as well. And it's funny you're bringing this up now because you're just trying to play through those scenarios.
I love that.
I've absolutely, probably one of the first bucks or whatever I've seen in the stand, like, and I was a teenager or, maybe even into my early 20s. And I can vividly remember times where I'm like, and maybe I try to make excuses like, oh, I had too many clothes on or whatever. But to your point, David, it's like I've pulled this bow back 1,000 times.
It's
and
crippling.
Like, you cannot get it back. Can't do it.
Nope.
It's crippling. I wish people could just like, most bow hunters I'm sure have experienced it at some point or another, but just I wish people could understand like what it just really cripples you. Like, it's like, if you allow it to, you know what I mean? I think you want to think over time, you learn to control it and stuff, and, you know, kind of focus on the objective there. But like those first couple times you experience buck fever, it's like, I don't know what else produces that kind of a feeling other than like trying to talk to a girl at a dance in middle school. Like the things that are just literally, you know,
they freeze you.
They paralyze you.
Mm-hmm.
The blackness comes in like this.
Yeah.
I'm telling you guys, but look, you know, we go to shows now, and I've, over the years, I've had countless 7, 8, 9-year-old boys come up with their father, showing me pictures of all these deer they've already taken.
Yeah.
And turned. And I tell them, I say, boys, I'm going to tell you something. You're way ahead of me, because I didn't shoot my first deer till I was, I think, 20 years old. That's when I killed my first deer. And I said, they're at 7, 8, 9 years old, and they've got 7, 8 deer under their belt.
Mm-hmm.
That's a reality, David, that I don't think a lot of people understand. It's like you started hunting when you were 14 years old and didn't shoot your first one until you were 20.
And never lost hope. Like, I'd shot 3 times.
Yeah.
All at does, and never lost enthusiasm. I was never discouraged because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything different.
Yep.
I just thought that was it.
Dude, I missed so many deer. You know, I want to say I definitely missed more. I didn't wound a lot of them. I definitely wounded a few. I mean, that was part of the process, but it was just perpetual failure from the time.
Absolutely.
I was 12. You have to be 12 in Pennsylvania to start hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, I don't know. I must have been at least 17 or 18, like similar to you, David, before I killed my first one there. And it wasn't pretty, you know.
I mean,
like,
I started bow hunting when I was 13, and I missed a bunch. I didn't kill my first buck with a bow until I was a junior in college. And I actually killed it. I broke my arm. I wasn't playing, but I broke my arm at the Penn State-Ohio State game, and I was sitting on the ground with an arm cast on, and this buck came up and was checking a scrape, and I shot it at 25 yards. And so I was a junior, and that's what I tell my kids even. I'm like, guys, you don't understand. Like, I didn't kill my first buck with a bow till I was a junior in college. And I hunted every chance I got since the time I was 13 years old with a bow.
Wow. And
you
almost...
I'm telling you, it's amazing that my journey, where God has taken me in my journey through life, his hand has been involved, looking back on it now, in every step of the way, which I'm so thankful for. But I didn't realize it at the time, that he has guided my life to be where I am today, to glorify him, but to what he has done for me and the experiences he has given me. And he allowed me to go through that 6-year period of not knowing what I was doing, to missing 3 does, to finally shooting a deer. I look back thinking that's one of the greatest memories ever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, we talk about it a lot, David. I think those struggles are what hooked you for life, right?
100%.
That's it.
Yeah. And now you talk to people who have these kids, and it just drives me crazy sometimes that they're growing their kids up to be trophy hunters.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of, just, hey, let's just go shoot some does and let's be respectful and thankful for what we get. And I would think most people are like that, but every once in a while you run across that dad who wants to for his son to be a trophy hunter at the age of 9.
Yep.
And I think that's setting them up for failure.
It is.
And there's taking some of the enjoyment out of it. And the only problem I have with the trophy management things that are being instilled in a lot of states, including Georgia, and the counties is county by county. You have a trophy county, and most counties are. There's a minimum of what you can shoot now. Like a buck has to have at least 4 on one side.
Yep.
Something like that. I think it's wonderful. However, I don't like that restriction for kids or first-time hunters.
Absolutely.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
That's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got the, so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance.
Sure.
The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt. You know, I mean, so I've got an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. Both started hunting early. My youngest started hunting earlier than my oldest just because, you know, kids develop at different ages and are ready. Plus, he had watched his older brother do stuff. Both have been successful. They both killed multiple bucks at this point in their life, which, again, way more than I did. But even still, and I think, you know, the biggest they killed is a 2-year-old 8-point, basically. But even still with that, like, I worry as a dad that it's like they're having success, which they're happy and I'm happy about it. But it's like, where's the fine line to where, boy, what we just all talked about, this struggle that really was what made us hooked to hunting here later in life, right? I worry that too much success too early is going to basically not hook them because they're like, well, yeah, every year we go out and we shoot one.
Right. There's no more challenge, or I mean, like what we were talking about earlier. I look back now, I was so laser focused on just getting a deer in the back of the truck.
Yep.
For 6 years.
Yeah.
And you build that kind of commitment and dedication, it just doesn't go away.
Yep. That's exactly it. Yeah. And I agree. I think that I think that is the kind of thing. And it doesn't mean that people are you know, young kids can't just shoot deer and be super successful and be hooked for life. Cause I know that there's a lot of them. I met a lot of them, but I think it's a very fine line. And on the other side, the argument is, well,
it's an impossible prescription. Like how do you like the three, you know, cycles that we just kind of talked through between the three of how do you prescribe? It's like, hey, here's, you know, the little bit of thing to get you interested in it. Now go fail for, you know, 6 to 10 years, you know, and just go miss a bunch of them. And because you don't wish that on anybody, you know, hey, I'd love to see you be successful and let me help you with that. And I think you can facilitate it, but I don't think it is possible to like navigate somebody's course for them. You just have to, you know, like, you know, I'm doing with Corey. That's one of the most fun parts about exposing people to, you know, bow hunting, especially, but just hunting in general, is to get to see them realizing some of the first things that we realized. Like, as you walked across that mud puddle and you saw that deer track, your brain, you know, you're like, this is it. There's the tree. Let's do it. And you should, you know, there has to be room for that. There can't be like, hey, no, we're going to go. I mean, maybe there can be some coaching, but like, so my good friend Corey, I'm going to have out here in a week or so, I've seen him through and he's older than I am, right? But he's like, you know, far behind me from a hunting experience standpoint. And it's a lot of fun for me to just be like, here's the pieces that you need more and more. You know, initially I was like, hey, here's where we're going. Here's what we do this. But now it's more like, hey, you know, here's what this weather's kind of doing. Here's some of these deer that are in this area. Like, you know, what do you think?
Yeah.
And I can see him start to put the pieces together and you guide him and stuff. And David, last year he killed a buck, towards the end of November. That was the very first time that he had gone out by himself.
Yep.
Chose the weather of, and this is on my farm in Ohio, so it spoils me to get to experience this. Chose the weather pattern. He's like, hey, this weather looks really good. What do you think? I'm like,
yep.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm thinking this stand. What do you think? I'm like, yep. And he's like, because the wind is doing this. I'm like, you got it, dude. I would go try. And he freaking killed this 4-year-old, you know, with his bow out there by himself. And I was like,
it was awesome.
Couldn't have been more proud. I mean, it was amazing.
And you know what? That's quite the accomplishment. It really is.
Huge.
I remember going back real quick. I remember looking at Outdoor Life one year when I was like 14 or 15 in that little pullout section. And they had a diagram of what a buck track would look like in the snow what a doe track would look like in the snow. Have no idea why that was useful information at the time.
Yeah,
but
you were in South Georgia as well, so.
But I had that in my mind, like, okay, if we ever get 12 inches of snow down here,
I'm gonna have them dead.
hey, I'm gonna be tracking bucks in the snow in South Georgia.
Yeah.
But I was just, I couldn't, I loved it. I like everything was soaking in. I didn't care if it was, I didn't care. I was everything. But think about hunting back then when there was no such thing as a trail camera.
Right.
There was no such thing as a rangefinder. I mean, I remember going out and putting a rock at 20 steps and putting a rock at 30 steps. I wouldn't shoot past that, but my rangefinder. I mean, because you didn't have any other, and back then I didn't want to put a piece of flagging tape on a bush because I was convinced in my mind the deer would see that.
Yeah.
It's crazy how things have changed.
Yeah, it is wild. Well, okay, so you obviously you got that bug. You know, you're, let's say at this point you kill your first deer in your 20s. What happened next? Like, at what point did you meet Bill and come across the whole Realtree side?
Well, so that's one of the most often asked questions I get, and it's a very interesting story. And again, I truly will say that without knowing it, when I tell y'all and the audience that the hand of God was on my life, I didn't even realize it till I look back. So I had the hunting bug right through high school.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know what I was doing, had not shot a deer. My brother had gone to the University of Georgia and graduated, and his best friend got a degree in wildlife biology.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that I loved to hunt. Well, he took a job, my brother's best friend, with his biology degree. My brother, by the way, went on to be a professional archaeologist.
Oh, wow. Followed his dream.
He's a professional now, and he's considered to be one of the top authorities in Southeast Indian artifacts. So he's incredible. But his friend took this job at this deer plantation, worked there a year, and I had gone after high school. I had gone and I'd played college basketball for 2 years, and I was transferring to the University of Georgia to finish my degree because I realized I wasn't going to make a living in the NBA. So I was going to transfer to the University of Georgia. I was all set. And 2 weeks before classes started in early September or the end of August, Mark, my brother's buddy, called me up out of the blue and said, "Dave, we are looking to hire somebody at this plantation in Middle Georgia to just come and work during deer season, just to be a grunt, just to do whatever needs to be done. Would you be interested in coming up and interviewing for the job?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like I couldn't imagine going and working at a deer hunting, quail hunting plantation. So I went up, and it's called Burnt Pine Plantation, and the land was leased from a foreign family that owned a bunch of ground. But David Morris, who founder of North American Whitetail magazine and now hosts Tecumani Bucks on TV, David Morris owned Burnt Pine Plantation, not the ground, but the hunting operation.
Right.
In the lot.
Yep.
I go up there and interview with the head biologist, and I get the job. And my mom and dad said, "David, if you really think you would enjoy this, then just start going to University of Georgia in January and go up there and work this fall." So with their blessings, I went up there. And I thought to myself, when I walked in, I thought, you know what? I've never killed a deer, but I'm going to guide somebody, you know? I'm going to be a guide, but that's not what they had in mind. I did everything. I cut the grass around the lodge. I went to the grocery store and bought groceries. I cleaned the dog kennels every morning. They taught me how to field dress deer. So I would field dress deer. I would help the guides. I'd do whatever it took. And I was so happy. And the funny story about this buck is that I shot, David Morris had said it was 13,000 acres. Now tell me if this story is getting boring, because I'll move on.
No.
13,000 acres. David Morris has set aside 100 acres for the staff to hunt on. Now, none of them ever hunted because they just didn't think there was a lot of deer over there. That's why we got to hunt it, you know?
Yeah.
So I go over there one evening after all my chores had been done, and I had seen some deer signs, some scrapes and rubs, and I hung a tree stand. By now I've graduated to the lock-on type stand.
Mm-hmm.
I've got me a stand hung, and I tell Lawrence Wood, the head biologist, I said, Lawrence, if you're okay with it, I think tomorrow afternoon, I think I'm going to go hunt. And it was late October, perfect weather. He says, where are you going to hunt? I said, that 100 acres behind the trailer house. He said, there's no deer over there. He said, that's why we get to hunt it. And I said, yeah, but I found a little sign. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. He said, all right, have at it. I go over there and I sit up in my stand. And an hour before dark, I'm sitting there. And I hear what sounds like a deer walking in the hardwood leaves.
Mm.
And I turn around and I look, because see, in South Georgia, we don't have that many hardwoods. It's all pine.
Right.
You don't hear. Well, I hear this deer walking. I turn around and I look behind me, and it's a buck. And he's just kind of on that late October, kind of up on his feet, looking, And I look at that buck, and he's coming towards me. He's 60, 80 yards out, and I'm thinking, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm sitting there looking at a buck, and he's walking right towards me. I immediately go into this psychology thing, like, okay, listen, you're not going to miss this deer. You're not going to miss another deer. You're not going to miss another deer. It's just a deer. It was a buck, and it was a big buck. The deer comes up to 15 yards. I don't remember anything much. It's kind of like the doe I shot at, the first deer I ever shot at. And all I saw was that I smoked him. Arrow went through him. He takes off running. I cannot believe it. Like I'm in shock. I get down. I can't find my arrow. I can't find blood. I don't even know what I'm looking for. I don't. It's new to me, right? So I go back to, I tell all the guys, I say, hey, look, I just shot a deer. And they say, yeah, right. Come on. I said, no, like I did. And Lawrence goes, well, where is he? And I said, Lawrence, I don't know. I can't find my arrow. I can't find blood. And he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back in there at daylight, and we're going to try to see if we can find this deer. And I said, okay, it's cool enough. He said, the meat won't spoil. It'll be fine. It was a cool night. I never took my clothes or boots off all night. I sat in the lodge and waited for Lawrence to come back right before daylight. So at daylight, we go out there and showing him the stand and where the deer was standing, and we start looking and we don't see anything. And he says, okay, you go this way. I'll go this way. If you find anything, you let me know. And I'll never forget, after 20, 30 minutes of looking, I hear him way off go, hey. I go, what? He says, I got him. I could not believe it. So I take running. I got my bow with me. I take off running. I'm tripping. I'm falling. And then there's a little clearing. And I go through this hedge brush. And there's Lawrence standing in this little clearing looking down at this buck. And I'll never forget, I get up to him, and I'm looking down, and I look at Lawrence, and I look down, and he's got this big smile on his face, and he's so happy. And I said, Lawrence, that's not my buck. He said, what are you talking about? And I said, Lawrence, the deer I shot at was a lot bigger than that. And he, well, that's funny. Your arrow sticking in him.
You'll have that.
Oh, boy.
Was, okay. He was a 7-pointer, year and a half old 7-pointer. I think they scored him out at 63 inches.
That's awesome.
But it was the first deer anybody in my family had ever taken.
Wow.
It was the first deer ever. And
wow.
And it was so exciting. But anyway, I'm getting around to how I met Bill. So I worked at the plantation, and I went to school and I come back during the fall and I'd work again. But when I graduated from Georgia, David Marsh hired me to be the manager of the plantation.
Mm.
So that was my first full-time job out of school, and it was in the hunting industry, and I loved it. And I had gotten married, and we lived on the plantation for 2 or 3 years, and finally it got to the point where it was a lot of hours for a married guy wanting to have a family. So we moved to LaGrange, where I live now. And I, along with a friend, opened up a very small hunting store and fishing store. It was an outdoor store called LaGrange Outdoors. And a friend of mine was the fishing end. He was a guide out on West Point Lake. And I was the hunting end of the business, but it was a very small local outdoor shop.
Yep.
That was in 1987. Well, Bill came out with Realtree in 86. And my doors hadn't been open 3 or 4 weeks. And the guy comes in, a salesman for Bill, pitching this new Realtree pattern to sell in the store. And so I started selling Realtree in my store. But a friend of mine in LaGrange happened to be on a hunting lease with Bill in the county just south of it, not far from where Bill owns all that ground now, where Tyler killed that giant a few years ago.
Yep.
Far from that at all. My friend was in the hunting lease with Bill. He says, I'm going down. It was August. He said, I'm going down one afternoon late for this kudzu patch where deer come out in the evenings and eat. It's simple. He said, we're going to go look at deer, me and Bill. Would you like to go? And I said, sure, I'd love to go. So I go down there, and that's where I met Bill for the first time. And sure enough, there were 2 or 3 giants came out right before dark in velvet in August. And that's where I met Bill. Well, me and my friend kept rocking on with the store. And the following year, we were taught by the local. Now, keep in mind, at this point, there still were no TV shows on like there was a show or two on WGN out of Chicago, Babe Winkleman, a couple of shows like that. TNN, the national network, you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay. TNN had just started, and Jackie Bushman was one of the first hunting shows that was on there, the Buckmaster show.
Yep.
In like 89, 90, maybe 90. Me and my partner in the store were talked into starting a little local hunting and fishing show on the local cable access channel, not a network television, just a local. And we did that for the store, to promote the store. And it was awesome. We loved it. We fished, we rabbit hunted, we deer hunted, we shot quail, whatever it was. And it was really, really, really amateurish, but we loved it.
Yep.
Well, the following year, we wanted to do something a little better. So we pitched the idea to the NBC station in Columbus to let us do a regular hunting and fishing show. We called it Outdoors in Dixie. And so it aired in Columbus, Georgia on Sunday mornings at 8:30. I couldn't believe they let us do this. Like they had, I don't know why, but they had faith in us. And we started airing Outdoors in Dixie. Well, Bill Jordan, I knew Bill at this point, kind of. He saw the show on Sunday morning. And Bill, being the entrepreneur that he is, has incredible vision. He contacted me and he said, David, I saw the show. Realtree, and I'll never forget this. It's so interesting. He said, David, he said, he had been in business about 3 years at the time, 3 or 4 years. And by no means was Realtree profitable yet.
Yeah.
It was still trying to make it. He said, David, if Realtree is ever going to make it, we need a TV show. We need to be on the national network. We need to be on TNN. We need to be where Jackie is. He said, I don't know anything about TV. I don't know anything about cameras. I don't know anything about editing. I know nothing. And I knew very, very little. He said, would you be interested in coming to work for me? And let's see if we can't get a show on TNN. And without hesitation, as much as I love my store, again, God's hand was involved. And I didn't even, without hesitation, I went, yes, let's do it. So my partner took over the store, and I went to work for Bill in 1990. And we thought, okay, we're gonna buy some cameras, and we're going to get on TNN. No, it wasn't that easy, because TNN, they were a major player in cable TV.
Right.
They did they aired NASCAR races.
Yep.
Bull riding, country, hunting and fishing. That was their thing. Well, they weren't sure about the hunting thing. They didn't know if people would watch a hunting show. They were still on the fence about it.
Yeah.
They weren't willing to allow another hunting show to air, even though they had a couple, Jackie and another show, and they were, and it was rough back then. The shows were, and so Bill said, "Golly, what are we going to do?" And I said, "I don't know, Bill. I just left my store. He said, "I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to buy some cameras." So we bought some high 8. I'll never forget. We paid these little bitty high 8 format cameras. Shot these little tapes. I think we paid $12,000 a piece, and the cameras weren't very big.
Holy cow!
And they were $12,000 a piece. And he said, "We're going to buy 2 high 8 cameras, and we're just going to start filming deer hunts. And you know what? Let's do a video. Let's do a deer hunting video. See if we can sell that first while we're waiting to get on TV." I said, "Sounds good to me."
While we're waiting to get on TV.
That was about the time Will Primos had started the Truth series.
Yep.
And they were retailing for $49 to $59.
Holy cow, that's crazy.
What?
This is crazy now where this video market. So Will Primos comes out with the Truth. It's a huge hit. Cuz and I are and we're all friends. I love Cuz to death.
Yep.
Will and I are very close. And so Bill says, "You know what? We're going to do a video too. And I'm going to take it into Walmart because that's what they sold a lot of Realtree.
Right.
And I'm going to get Walmart to take this video. And we call it Whitetails in the Wild. I ask people all the time, what's the name of the first deer video we ever did? And they go, Monster Bucks.
Yeah.
I said, no, it's called Whitetails in the Wild. It was VHS. I think we shot 11 deer. I think the average score of a deer may have been 130, maybe average.
Mm-hmm. Were you traveling around the country for that, David?
We went to Texas and shot a few deer. I think we shot a couple on that one from Canada, maybe.
Okay.
But or from Georgia.
Yep.
Just Bill he goes in for his annual trip to Walmart. And he pitches the clothing deal, and they're all over. Like they loved Realtree, they loved Bill. Bill's such a nice, love Bill. So Bill breaks out this mocked up cover of Whitetails in the Wild, and he said, "Hey guys, I got this deer video, and I want to pitch it to y'all, but instead of it retailing for $49, $59, I want it to retail for $14.95." Because Bill's mind was already thinking, I'd rather sell a bunch, make less money to promote Realtree, the brand.
Yep.
Sure.
Very smart. He said, "I'm going to sell it." He told Walmart, he said, "You can still make your same margin. I'm going to sell it to y'all for $8. You sell it for $14.95. How many truckloads of these do y'all want?" Mm-hmm. Bill comes back from his meeting. I'm so pumped because this is my livelihood's on the line here, right? We're not on TV. We don't have a lot going on. We edited this deer video. And he says, "Well," I said, "How'd it go, Bill? How'd it go?" And I'll never forget. He says, "Well, got good news and bad news." He said, "Which one you want first?" I said, "Give me the good news." He said, "Walmart wants 36,000 copies.
Holy cow.
I said, "Bill, that's awesome." He said, I said, "What's the bad news?" He said, "Walmart wants 36,000 copies. And it's going to cost us $2.10 a piece to duplicate."
Wow.
That's $75,000 Bill didn't have.
Yeah.
And they would only take them on consignment.
So if it didn't sell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we bought them back.
Yep.
Walmart was not convinced that people would buy a deer hunting video.
Oh,
wow.
So Bill goes and borrows the money from his mom, I believe, to duplicate 36,000 copies of Whitetails in the Wild. This is this man's vision and commitment and willing to take risk. And so we did it full steam ahead. He borrows the money. He comes back. They go into Walmart, and 10 days after they hit the shelves, they were gone.
Wow.
So listen, and so Bill's like, okay, we got something. He calls up the buyer at Walmart, and I forget his name, but he and Bill were friends, and he said, Bill, those deer videos, we cannot believe it, but they just flew off the shelves. And Bill said, yeah, hey, how many you want in a reorder? You want to double that? You want to triple it? Or like reorder like now? And he said, no, we don't want any more. And Bill went, what? He said, no, Bill, we don't believe yet that people would buy that.
What?
And we were like, what? So they did not order anymore. Didn't want any more.
Wow.
So Bill goes, you know what, David? Here's what we're going to do. We were still pitching TNN, trying to get on, but they had let us know. At that point, they had let us know. And I'm going down a rabbit hole people may not care about.
No, they do.
We're TNN is letting us know, hey, kid, look, if we ever let y'all on the network, just to let you know, those little high-8 cameras you're running for your deer video is not going to cut it because it's not production. It doesn't meet the production qualifications. It's got to be Beta SP format, which is cameras like this, and they cost $60,000 a piece.
Jeez.
But that's the only camera that had the production qualities that would pass for national television.
Wow.
David, real quick, at the time, were you guys filming each other? Or I imagine there's no self-filming, there's no camera arms at this point, right?
No. We were filming each other. I was just a cameraman, and we had another guy that worked for us, and he was a cameraman, and we would film Bill and his friends. Huh. That's what we would do.
Got it.
There was no self-filming because, I mean, these cameras are still big, even the little high-8s. Self-filming wasn't even a thing then. Like, nobody would do that, right?
Yeah.
Well, so Bill says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy a little better camera. So we bought Super VHS. Believe it or not, was a higher format than high-8. We paid $40,000, I think, for those cameras. And Bill says, we're going to start a new video series. We're going to go try to kill some bigger deer. We're going to go to more places. And we're going to call it Monster Bucks of North America. So we did. Bill goes back into Walmart. We got 17 hunts on this one, I think. The deer are probably averaging 145 to 150. They're bigger deer. The video's better. The quality's better. Bill goes back into Walmart to pitch it. Same exact story. They said, Bill, looks great. Cover looks awesome. We can see improvement. We're not interested, though. But if you want to put them in on consignment, send us 54,000 copies. So Bill said, okay. He comes back. He's like, I'm killing myself here. So he comes up with the money, fronts it, sends 54,000 copies to Walmart. 10 days after they hit shelves, they're gone. That was the beginning of Monster Bucks. After that year, we had no problem getting into Walmart. And here's what's interesting. TNN approaches us. They hear about Monster Bucks. They've got Jackie Bushman on there on a TV show. A couple of other shows that were really, really, really bad. I mean, they were horrible. They finally gave us permission. They said, Bill, if you'll buy beta cameras, 2 at $60,000 a piece, then we'll work with you guys and give y'all a show.
Wow.
So Bill said, okay.
I cannot get over the cost of those cameras, man. That's the
1993 was the first year Realtree Outdoors aired on TV and on TNN.
Wow.
Bill asked me, and I was the editor, and nowadays I can't even cut on an edit machine. But this was not editing on computers. This was editing on an old system that had the big tape reels, and it was something else. But Bill asked me, he said, David, what can we do? This is where this gets really interesting. And this is where I think we transform the entire hunting industry from a standpoint of television. He said, David, what can we do to set ourselves apart? And I knew immediately, and I never thought Bill would actually go for it. And I said, Bill, I know exactly what we need to do. He said, what? I said, we've got to show impact. He said, what are you talking about? I said, Bill, on Monster Bucks, we show the arrow hit the deer or the bullet hit the deer. He said, yeah. And I said, Bill, nobody's showing that on TV.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
nobody had shown Impact on television.
Mhm.
Nobody would. I'll never forget this. Jackie Bushman, if he were sitting right here beside me right now, and Jackie and I are dear friends, he will tell you, he came to me and Bill and said, hey, y'all cannot show Impact on TV. You're going to offend people. We can't offend people, which I get it. But we're like, no. The reason the not Jackie show as much as a couple of other shows were so bad was there was no accountability. There's no credibility. Like they could film one deer walking in, show the guy shooting the bow or the gun going off, and then it cuts to him walking up. There was one episode on another show. They had this one buck. They had footage of this one buck out in the field. It cuts to the hunter raising his gun up, squeezes the trigger, goes like that, gets down, goes, all right, gets back down, walks up, and I was watching it, and I noticed he walked up like behind the deer. The cameraman was on this side of the deer. It was crazy. The cameraman found the deer first.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Classic.
Walks up, he stops 10 feet short of the buck, and I noticed on the TV show it was a mounted deer head.
No.
Yes, it was but you know what? It was okay because nobody showed Impact. So there was no credibility, no accountability. And I said, Bill, if we can show Impact, it will go over like crazy. He said, let's do it. So we start, these first shows, I edited them. I'm showing Impact. They hit the air. And let me tell you, boys, what? When we hit the air showing Impact, the way people could see it on a Monster Bucks or the way people could see it on Will's Truth Series that had just started, it was unbelievable, the response we got. I will say this. Our ratings were so high back in the day. We would air on a Sunday evening following NASCAR. We got more views in one episode of Realtree Outdoors in 93, 94, 95 than we would get in an entire year on Outdoor Channel.
Wow.
It's your brains, because there's nowhere else for people to go to watch.
Right.
There were no other channels. And word got out, hey, these Realtree boys, they're showing Impact. And like it was 100, they were in 100 million households. Our Nielsen rating was a 2.8.
Jeez.
That first, which means 2.8 million homes on average watched every episode.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Crazy. And we took off because we were showing Impact. And now we got death threats. I remember getting letters in the mail from anti-hunter. And actually there was a 2-week period there that first year where the big dogs from TNN called us up and said, hey, you can't put Impact in the Realtree Outdoors anymore because we're getting too much heat from anti-hunters. Huh. So I went to Bill and they said, David, if you send up another episode with Impact, we're not going to air it. And I went to Bill and he said, we don't have a choice. So I sent the next show and we took the Impact out. Well, this is before email. This is before cell phones. This is before we started getting phone calls at our office from hunters who were so upset because we were not showing Impact anymore. And we just told them to call TNN.
Yeah.
Just call TNN. 2-3 weeks go by, TNN calls us up. Dave Barton was the guy's name. He was head of program. And he said, David, if y'all want to put Impact in, you please do.
Please do.
Because the hunters had spoken up and expressed their shock and displeasure because we caved into the anti-hunters.
Yeah.
That was that. That was the end of that. So we were the first show to ever show Impact on TV.
Wow.
And it went over like unbelievable. So that was, I'm sorry for the long.
No, I love it, man.
But that was the beginning of outdoor television in my mind.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear.
Man, Jared, we are tree stand fanatics, and I think the one thing that we have learned over all these years is to kill big bucks, we got to be mobile. We've been hunting out of Lone Wolves for many years, the original Lone Wolf, and then obviously with the custom gear stuff, we were using the 0.5 and the 0.75. Yeah. And the one thing that we talked about is like, what if there were no cables? Here we are.
I really just don't know how you can beat it, frankly. But, you know, a lot of that came, too, from a relationship that we've built with the DeQuistos. We've had both Cody and Andre on the podcast a few times. The passion for hunting, the outlook on the sport and stuff, I think is eye to eye with how we look at it. Everything that has gone into building this brand and to building these tree stands is something that we want to be a part of.
This is the 40th anniversary of these guys creating tree stands that have been critical to how we hunt whitetail deer today. If you look over the past, you'll see Andre's designs being implemented across so many stands over the years. Such a cool thing, but really has changed the way that we all hunt whitetail deer from above now.
Right now, you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, to get 7% off anything on the entire website. Be the lone wolf.
I mean, that
wow.
It seems like from the attention that came from the videos, and I know that he had some retail placement at Walmart and stuff, but I mean, that had to be the major vehicle for Realtree to take off.
To this day, that's the most major vehicle we've ever had in the history of the company.
Yep.
We still now this year was the first year after I think 32 years of Monster Bucks that we did not produce a DVD to buy, because nobody for the last 8-10 years nobody's bought DVDs anymore.
Yep.
Of any genre.
Yep.
Whether new releases, Disney, hunting,
Doesn't
people
matter.
just don't buy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a different world. But to this day, I still have people coming to me at shows and go, David, I've got every Monster Bucks. We would call Walmart and we would find out when they were getting the Monster Bucks in, and we would take and we'd do volume 1, volume 2. By then, he said, me and a friend, I would buy volume 1, he'd buy volume 2, but we have every one at our hunting camp, and we watch them every year, the VHSs and the DVDs, and it's been an incredible ride. So to be involved with Bill, to watch the creation of the video market, hunting video market, the creation, be a part of that, and ride it all the way up to the top, and all the way down to where now it's basically over, the video market for retail. What a ride.
Yeah, man.
Unbelievable. And that was, yeah, you're right. That was our major vehicle of you talking about brand awareness.
Yeah.
You talking about building a brand.
Yep.
That was an incredible brand building for us.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of risk and cost in that. I mean, you talk about the camera equipment, you talk about the production, you talk about just producing those VHS tapes and stuff. I mean, a lot of risk in that, but what came from it, enormous.
The cameras were outrageously expensive, and nowadays the new iPhones, you could get better quality video on an iPhone than you could a $60,000 Beta SP camera.
Yep. Crazy.
But back then, like literally, you know, most cameras now are obviously HD and 4K and all that, even higher. You know, $3,500 to buy you the little camera that'll do unbelievable stuff. And we were paying, like one time we got the new Beta SP cameras after being on TNN for about 3 years, because when they sold, then we went to ESPN2.
Yep.
Bill jumped up and we bought 2 Beta SP cameras, and they were $90,000 a piece.
Oh my gosh.
To stay up with the market. And I'll never forget, I was filming my dad. My dad he stayed bow hunting, and we had just bought I was filming my dad one morning, and he didn't know about being in front of a camera, but I didn't either. Anyway, it was a $50,000 camera. I get up in my stand and I lowered this little rope, and I pulled it up, and when we got through hunting, my dad climbed down. I lowered my camera down to my dad, and he was sitting there. He was perplexed, and my man was just an awesome guy, hardworking man. He said, I said, what, Dad? He goes, I don't know. He said, pulling a $50,000 camera up with a 50-cent rope just didn't make sense. I mean, and there's a lot of truth to that, because we've had a couple of cameras fall out of the trees. smashed. We had a brand new beta camera one year at the Milk River. Ben McDonald had just shot a deer on an alfalfa field, and alfalfa was almost knee high. Nick Munt was Bone Collector now, was the cameraman. He takes his camera, and all the excitement did recover and all this and that. We're done. The landowner's coming in to pick up truck, pick everybody up. And he's backing up to the deer, and all of a sudden you hear this crunch.
Oh.
He ran over the brand new Beta SP camera in the alfalfa. I mean, we got stories for days like that. I can,
and Nick Munn still lives today, you know?
Well, the farmer ran over it, not Nick Munt, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but we have the most incredible memories, though.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what a blessed life I have lived working for Realtree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the people we met, like we were joking, you know, earlier about like what I want to do for Halloween, but you know, I mean, you had your fair share of encounters with Earnhardt Sr.
Oh, I hunted with Dale Earnhardt more than anybody ever. As a matter of fact, I was up at his place one day, and his wife Teresa told me, said, "David, you spend more time with Dale than I do." Because we would hunt together all the time. We were always going places and hunt. I've got some of the craziest Earnhardt stories ever. I've got Earnhardt stories that would blow your mind.
I mean, but that's it, man. That is, it's kind of hard to like look at it in reflection, because we talk a lot about kind of where things are now and in the industry and how things seem, and you know, when you've experienced those things and have gone through even that what do we talk, like that early 2000s to 2010 or 12 time frame was like that was the Outdoor Channel heyday, you know.
Can I ask, I mean, what happened to TNN?
They sold.
Okay, so TNN sold to a channel called Spike TV.
Yep.
Okay.
And it was Gaylord. The Gaylord company owned the Opryland Resort, Ryman Auditorium, all those things in Nashville. The Gaylord is a huge corporation.
Oh.
They own TNN. Well, they were offered, I think, so much money for their space on the dial, on the satellite or the TV channels. A channel called Spike TV bought it, and they're as far away from hunting as you can get.
Right.
Yeah.
So when they sold to Spike TV, that's when we went to ESPN2.
Mm-hmm.
ESPN2 had an outdoor block on either Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings. I don't remember which.
I think it was Saturday mornings. I remember. Yeah.
Okay. And then ESPN2 started realizing they needed that space for more NFL and pro sports and sports in general. And so they discontinued hunting and fishing. Now they continue some championship bass fishing for a few years, but
Right.
ours, they got out of it. And then that's when we went to the Outdoor Channel.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what year that would have been. I don't know. I know we started road trips with Michael in 2002 or 4 or something, maybe.
Yep. That sounds right.
Wow.
So around 2000, maybe Outdoor Channel became a thing. And but when we started road trips with Michael, it was the first reality-based hunting show ever.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Michael's personality, it was a slam dunk, and it was as popular as anything I've seen ever come along in the hunting industry.
So, David, I mean, with your position at Realtree, like as things are evolving, are you involved like on the programming? Are you saying, hey, you know, Bill, we need to do this? Like, what is your kind of position there through that time frame? You know, as the show evolves, as you're jumping the different channels and stuff.
Yes. So for years and years and years, up until about 3 or 4 years ago, I ran all the TV and video production.
Okay.
My title, VP of TV and video production. Even though for years and years, I just had guys working there, the editors, camera guys that knew a whole lot more than I did, because I had started hunting in front of the camera, as you know, probably in 95 or 96.
Mm-hmm.
Bill wanted he wanted me and Michael both to get out in front of the camera more to help him, but I still ran the TV video department. But in reality, there were always guys there that were running it. You know.
Yeah.
I would book the trips and handle logistics and schedule the cameramen for years and years and years, because I had a lot of experience with outfitters and where to go and when not to go, where not to go. And when we were selling so many monster bucks, it was a huge profit center for us because we were selling so many copies.
Yeah.
But people were still buying a lot of videos. And this is before YouTube and the internet became big. And so we were filming a lot of deer hunts because everything we got, we could put 35, 40 hunts on each volume. There are 2 volumes. And we'd have 60 to 80 hunts a year, but they were selling so much we could justify it.
Right.
But when the sales slowed down and times changed, we started scaling back. And now a fellow by the name of Daniel Thomas has basically been running the TV and video department at Realtree for the last 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
My role has evolved in the last few years as more of a ambassador for Realtree. Bill doesn't travel as much to store openings or grand openings or events or seminars. So I go and I fly the flag, which I'm so do that. It's such a privilege to me to go and speak or do podcasts or fly the flag or go do seminars or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I do now.
Very cool.
I there may not be a better job in the world that I can think, like, in that time to be like, oh, you know, I book all the hunts basically for Realtree. we just hunt for, I mean, if there ever was a hunting for a living, like that's maybe the closest that I've heard.
Listen, I tell people all the time, I have the greatest job in the world.
Yeah.
And to work for a man like Bill Jordan, it's been amazing because Bill is such a caring, kind person. You know, we probably have 55, 60 employees, and that has fluctuated through the years. But if the world knew how much Bill Jordan cared about his employees, he provided for us through benefits packages or, things like that. But to work for Bill and to have the greatest job in the world, I tell people this, when I get to heaven, I say, when I do get to heaven and I'm standing face to face with Jesus, I think I want to say, God, why did you pick me? Why did you pick me to have the greatest job in the world? Because I wonder sometimes, wow, this is the greatest job ever. Like it really is.
Yeah.
Can you think of a better job?
No, not, and I look at it, and obviously, just even talking to you here, David, like, I would say that you have a very optimistic outlook on your life and on a daily basis, right? And, I'm a firm believer in that people that have that, optimistic outlook try to find positive things, and often those positive things happen to themselves, right? Versus the people who are always pessimistic, I feel like always end up in negative situations. And so,
right.
In a weird way, as you talk about, how God's hand guided you in that, I think that your personality and your outlook on things just kept driving you forward. And I don't think you give yourself probably enough credit to developing a lot of these things that maybe would have never existed had David Blanton not said, like, we should do this, or how about this?
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I do credit my faith in that outlook. I live my life with a tremendous amount of hope because I know where I'm going one day. I know, but I also to be given that much trust from Bill and Bill deserves a lot of credit in taking people in the industry who may not even wear Realtree now, that may wear other patterns, but they started Realtree.
Yep.
Their careers were launched through Realtree. And then they grew, and then they went and signed a big deal with another camo pattern. But they got their start through Realtree, and it could be the Lee and Tiffany Lakoskis of the world, or the Jay Gregors of the world, or, Donna Candy Kiski of the world. there's so many people like that Bill gave a start to through Realtree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think,
and I've been able to meet some incredible hunters. I mean, the best hunters I know are some of the people that are from where I grew up around Alma that are just incredible hunters. And they would hunt circles around me, but I've just been blessed to be put on a platform. But I don't pretend to be the kind of hunter that some people I know are.
well, I think what was so cool when you go back into some of that early stuff that you guys did is that the millions of us who were watching it, you know, and I'm trying to relate that into today's kind of stuff. The millions of us that were watching it back there we were in awe. We were aspired. Like if I saw you in the Milk River or in Texas or in Iowa or wherever it was, as a kid growing up in Pennsylvania, you know, in a state where we were killing 90% 1-year-old deer, like it was just like, it was amazing. It was the look into the world that I never knew even existed out there.
Well, like Milk River, for example, I'll never forget this. The year was about 1995, 96. If you remember North American Whitetail, you know North American Whitetail magazine.
Yep.
There was a writer back in the day named Dick Idle.
We just had Cody Idle on not too long ago, his son.
Okay, Dick Idle was their #1 whitetail writer and hunter.
Yep.
Through print.
Mm-hmm.
He got a phone call one day. He lives in Montana. He got a phone call from somebody up in the northeast corner of the state. They got hold of him and said, Mr. Idle, we've got 5 families. We have put together this 6 miles of Milk River alfalfa fields. We got a ton of whitetails. We haven't hunted it in 5 years. We've been waiting. We want to invite you to come and deer hunt our place for the first time, basically ever. Are you interested? Well, Dick didn't have the interest or the time to do it, so he calls David Morris, his boss, the North American Whitetail. David, me, because I had worked for David when I was in college at Burnt Pine Plantation, and David knew we were doing TV and video, and he says, David, we've got an invite to go to a place called the Milk River, somewhere in northeast Montana. Never heard of it, but Dick said it's full of whitetails. Would y'all be interested in going up there and filming? I'll go and Bill can go, and let's just take some cameras and just see what it is. I have no idea. I talked to Bill, and Bill said, well, let's go try it. Well, we get up there and come to find out nobody in that entire part of the world hunted a whitetail. They all went up into the big country to hunt mule deer.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was their thing. People up there then wouldn't even look at a whitetail. They wouldn't even look at whitetails. Were not even considered an animal worth going after to the residents. And of course, there were no non-residents going up there to hunt whitetails.
Mm-hmm.
So we go there the first year. I'm running camera with David Morris, and we're sitting on this. Somebody had taken a door that goes into a house, and they had nailed a door across two 2x12s in a cottonwood tree overlooking an irrigated alfalfa field. David and I climb up there and stand on this door. I've got my camera up there on a tripod, and I tell people that one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life was that first evening. When I'm fixing to throw some numbers at you, what we saw up there. By the time all the deer came out way early, way before dark. In this 20-acre alfalfa field, there had to be 200 whitetails. Half of them were bucks. Well, I think we counted 40 bucks out there at one time that were 130 or better. There were like 10 deer over 160, and there were like 3 deer over 170. All out there at one time. And of course, we killed a big deer, and then Bill ended up killing a big deer. Well, my point is, when we started airing hunts from the Milk River, boom, 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 outfitters started popping up. The locals started forming outfitting companies up and down the river. Before you knew it, everybody was going to Montana, the Milk River, to deer hunt.
Yeah.
And of course, for years we hunted the Milk River to EHD, hit them so hard several times and knocked them back a lot. But that was walking into a brand new, fresh, never been hunted before whitetail mecca.
Wow.
And that was unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Nobody went to Montana to hunt whitetails.
Yeah.
Man, those are the kind of places that, like, obviously everyone dreams of, you know, but it's just like, it's not like in a pessimistic way, but you have to wonder, you're like, man, are there any of those left? You know, I mean, we certainly, there's new places for us. We go and it's like, well, yeah, but guys have been hunting there for years. And I don't know. It's a bittersweet story to hear that, because it's like how amazing that must have been. And it's awesome. But also it's like, man, will I ever get to experience anything like that? I don't know.
It was amazing. To your point, I have thought a lot. Is there another place like that? And I do not think there is.
Yeah.
But whitetail has become such a thing now, and everybody whitetail hunts all over North America. I don't believe there's that place like that any longer.
Yeah.
Now, there may be a big private ranch somewhere that nobody can hunt.
Sure.
But as far as a general area, I don't. It's very similar to one of the other phenomenons that I experienced was caribou hunting in Quebec about 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. We went up and hunted this herd of caribou in Quebec, bow hunted. You could kill two. I'll never forget. We hit the migration unbelievably. I sat on top of a big rock like the size of a house. I climbed up and got on top of this big rock with the cameraman. I sat up there, and I literally had 1,000 caribou bulls come by me at 15 yards.
Jeez.
In the course of 3 or 4 hours.
Holy cow.
Waiting on a big one. I shot a big one. Well, I'll never experience that again, because 2 years after we left, the entire herd died because of a parasite that got into the lichen that they eat off the rocks.
Wow.
Killed hundreds of thousands of animals. And to this day, to my knowledge, that herd is not back to a huntable population.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I was fortunate to experience that one day.
Yeah, I mean, that's the stuff that is, and it's hard for people. You know, here's the thing is, like, when we talk about a lot of those things that you went through, as compared to now, it's like the light has been shined on everything at this point. It seems like there's no rock left unturned because of the way that information is transferred. You know, back in the day when you had 3 or 4 magazines, you know, and a couple shows, and that was it. It was like, you know, when I would see you guys hunt, whatever, Indiana, Iowa, South Texas, it was like, for the first time, I'm saying, like, wow, that's like insane habitat, or those deer are huge. I've never even seen anything like that before. And now it seems like most of us, maybe not firsthand, but through social or whatever, see these things and hear these things on a daily basis almost.
And I still believe that we are living in the golden age of whitetail hunting.
Yes.
Because people are so mindful of year-round nutrition for their whitetails, taking out does, managing the herd for quality, but just the nutrition now that they're planning for these whitetails year-round, that used to not be a thing at all outside. In addition to the ag fields out in the Midwest, people all over, even like Georgia and Alabama and wherever, they're planning like high protein year-round food plots for these deer.
Yep.
And I'm shocked. I'm so shocked that Milo Hansen's record has not been broken. You know, he shot that deer 30 years ago.
Yep.
Because we paid Milo just a little bit of money to have the exclusive video interview rights on Monster Bucks. I think it was Monster Bucks 5, maybe. I don't remember, but I went up there and videoed the official scoring ceremony of Milo and his deer, and I'm shocked that deer that record has not been broken.
Pretty wild.
Because, you know, it's a huge deer, but 213 1/8, but it's very clean.
Yep.
Now the deer are gigantic, but they got all these kickers and flyers and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's another pet peeve of mine. I don't think there should ever be anything called a net score on a deer.
Sure. Yeah, we're in agreement on that as well. In fact, we had, I guess it'd been a podcast before this. We had Spook Span on, and Spook's killed a pile of 200-inch deer, and he told us on that one that he knows of a guy who has the world record typical that would beat Milo's buck on a wall. He just doesn't want anybody to know it. And he was going to hunt it, but the guy had asked too much money to come and get access or something.
Yeah, well, he offered it for Spook to hunt it, because that's what he's got. He's got like a network of, and he's trying to track down these giant deer or whatever. And guy called him, apparently he's like, hey, it's out there, and wanted too much money. I don't know what it was. Over $30,000. I know that. I would guess probably close to 100. But so that guy, after Spook kind of refused or was like, I can't do it. He went out and killed it, and then he sent him pictures, and and he was asking specific measurements, and I mean, Spook would know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's his business basically to put the score together, and he's like, we're like, are you pretty sure that would be a world record? And he's like, oh, I know it would.
He thinks it
absolutely.
He thinks it would be net close to 220.
Interesting. I've not heard that. That's interesting.
It's hard to think that people could keep that kind of a deer secret, but you never know.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Better Backstrap.
Well, one thing that's undeniable, man, is you and I both like to eat. And so we're going to be partnering with the Better Backstrap this year to have the best seasonings possible for our meat this summer.
Yeah. Well, dude, when it comes to venison, it's like you've heard me talk about before. It's like, what does the preparation for all this look like and stuff? And it's like, I really want to make a point of eating more venison moving forward. And some of the Better Backstrap mixtures have made it super easy.
Yeah. And so we've got kind of 3 core mixtures. You've got your original Better Backstrap, which is for that grilling of your backstrap or tenderloins or anything like that. You've got your classic taco mix.
Always can't go wrong with tacos.
Can't go wrong with that. And then you've got your standard SPG in the orange can.
Well, SPG and down the hatch.
There you go. So right now, if you go to betterbackstrap.com, you can use the code HUNTR15, get 15% off any of your orders on the seasonings, and there'll probably be more coming out here throughout the year.
Get yourself a Better Backstrap. It's funny, David, too, you mentioned Dick Idle. So we had Cody, his son, on just not that long ago. And he had a funny, just in passing story about you. And I'm pretty sure it's accurate. Maybe you can confirm that you guys ran into each other in the middle of nowhere. I can't remember the state, if it was Wyoming or Montana.
It was Montana, and I had drawn arguably the greatest tag I've ever drawn through the lottery. It was a Montana bighorn sheep tag.
Yep.
So we were out there doing it ourselves, me and my oldest son and a couple of buddies. And we were riding down there's deer season. There's a lot of hunters out there too.
And the way Cody describes this is he's like, there's this blacked out Escalade, or he's like this, it looks like the president of the United States was pulling up, is how he described it.
I just remember it as a rental Suburban.
A rental Suburban.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a rental Suburban, and we saw these 2 guys walking down the road with their orange vest on and their guns, and they weren't anywhere near a vehicle. And I said, man, we ought to ask those guys if they want to ride. so we stopped, and I said, hey, you guys need a ride by any chance? And but it was cold. It was like below zero, a lot of snow on the ground. And I got out. And I was asking him if he needed a ride, and he looks at me kind of funny. He says, are you who I think you are? and when I get that, I go, well, I don't know who you think I am,
You're like, said, I'm Michael Waddell.
Are you David Blanton? And I go, yeah. He said, you're friends with my dad. And I said, really? Who's your dad? And he said, my dad's Dick Idle. And I said, no way. And he said, what are you doing out here? And I said, well, I've got a sheep tag. And he goes, you're kidding me. And I go, no. And he says, we saw a giant ram this morning. Did he tell you this?
Yes. Yep.
He said, we saw a giant ram this morning. See that ridge, like 3 ridges over? And we threw our glasses up. And he said, that snow is full. He said, see those tracks in the snow on top of that ridge a mile and a half away? And I said, yeah. And he said, that's where we were this morning. There's a big ram out there with a bunch of ewes. So we literally took them back to their car, went back, hiked in there, found the tracks, hung out for the rest of the day, and ended up killing that ram.
You did kill him?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
What are the chances of all the people in the world that it would be Dick Idle's son you'd run into in the middle of Montana?
Yeah.
I guess that'd be the
crazy
state to do it.
But yeah, so Cody Idle put me on that ram.
Wow.
Wow. Did you guys go out and kill it together? Was he with you when you shot it?
No, we just took them. They were deer hunting.
Yeah.
And we just took them to the vehicle, and then we went back and just hiked back in there and saw the tracks and figured out what canyon they went in. And we didn't know what to do. And we just sat up, and sure enough, a little before dark, the sheep came out of this canyon where we could see them, and it was awesome.
Wow. It's amazing.
Well, so, David, I'm curious to know if we can go back, and we kind of went through the whole, Realtree progression and like the business evolution and stuff. I'm curious to know from like a deer hunter evolution and standpoint, you went from not killing a deer until you're 20 years old to all of a sudden now, filming and booking hunts across the country, like for a living, basically. It's like, was that kind of like 0 to 100 really quickly? Or, I mean, how did that kind of go for you?
Yes. Cause so when we started filming for Whitetails in the Wild, the video, I reached out to a couple of outfitters, just didn't know them. I mean, there was no history or anything. And we've had some, not many, but we've had a few bad experiences with some outfitters in the early days that we didn't know about. But by and large, outfitters are really good. And we just developed some great friendships with some people, and it just built. And then when we started airing on TV, we would start getting calls from outfitters saying, "Hey, I saw your show. Golly, we've got this. Would y'all be interested in hunting this? We've got this land here in this state or this state or this state." And I would do my due diligence and talk to them, and kind of that. I love that part of my job way back in the day, was trying to figure out, is this guy legit? Is he full of bull? Is he got what he says he's got? And it didn't take me long to realize just some key things to look for when you're talking to an outfitter. If he's legit, if he blows it up too hard, then they don't have what they. You look for a certain amount of humility.
Yep.
And got some good deer, and those are the kind of guys that you really want to hunt with. But so then I just started booking hunts, and we started leasing the ground at the Milk River, and then going to Iowa through outfitters. But we got approached by a lot of people back then, because back in the TNN days and even the ESPN2 days, all of our hunts would be comped by outfitters, because their phones would literally ring off the hook for 3 or 4 days after a show. Yeah. Because there weren't all these 700-800 hunting shows like there is now through YouTube. They literally, I remember stories of some outfitters would hire a call service when the show would end, to have a call service handle the influx of calls. Yeah, there were so many.
Jeez.
Take messages.
So David, from like a strategy standpoint, so like you've only ever hunted like Georgia and maybe some surrounding states and stuff, and so now all of a sudden you're in the Midwest and Montana, and is it mainly at the outfitters' guidance? They're like, "Hey, we've got some stands hung here, and go and do this," or I mean,
no, we did a lot of the stuff ourselves, because what we were doing was new. We were videoing, and there's a difference between hunting an animal, just hunting him, and videoing him to hunt. And it took a whole new mindset, because I was real. Michael Waddell always gave me a hard time. He and I would be walking, like when we were learning that Milk River country, me and him for the first time, when we leased that ground, they didn't bow hunt it. Michael always gave me a hard time, because we would be walking around looking for the tree, looking for the tree. What's the tree that would be perfect for video? And I would spend hours looking for the tree, because I knew from a camera standpoint of what I wanted the hunt to look like, what I wanted the video to look like. And it's hard to find the perfect tree for that. And I would contemplate that for hours. And a killing tree is not usually a good tree for video. That the two are different. And so it was very interesting. But what we learned pretty quick was there's 3 really good times to kill a big mature whitetail on camera. The first time is early season, really early, especially when whitetail season can come in sometime in September.
Yep.
Now, states don't open until October 1st. And now, there are people hunting big whitetails October 1st. because they don't pressure them at all, that can be hunted that early. But typically speaking, by October 1st, a lot of your hard-horn whitetail bucks have gone nocturnal, as opposed to early September, when they're still running in that bachelor group, and they're very patternable, they're very predictable. They're just going from bed to feed, feed to bed, and it's just they're very predictable. If you don't pressure them and get in too tight on them, and you certainly don't go in there with a bad wind to hang a stand or anything, that's a great time. We figured out that's a great time to shoot a big deer.
Yep.
The second great time surprises a lot of people when I tell them this. It won't surprise you guys, but I asked Don Kiske one day, and I think Don Kiske is one of the elite deer hunters in the world.
Yep.
Because Don's such a soft-spoken, humble guy. Hard to get a lot of information out of Don, but he knows a lot. I asked Don one day, I said, Don, if you could only pick one day to go shoot a mature whitetail with your bow, what would that date be? And he looked at me and he said, October 28th. I said, really? He said, October 28th. He said, however, you got to have a couple of things go along with that. You got to have cooler than normal temperatures. Helps tremendously. The moon needs to be right, but you got to have unpressured deer. But if you get those three things, and the temperature mainly, October 28th is a phenomenal time to shoot a big whitetail. I remember one year, Lee Lukoski, when he was running Realtree, he went on this desert bighorn sheep hunt, and he basically booked the entire month of November to go hunt this sheep. And I said, Lee, what are you doing? He said, David, November that's not my favorite time to hunt a big whitetail, a big target buck. He said, I like late October. So late October is a great time, as you guys know, because those bucks are ready. I mean, they've been ready to breed for weeks. They're feeling frisky. They're laying down scrapes and rubs, and I mean, they can be called. It's a great time to hunt a big whitetail. And then the third time to really take advantage and kill a big whitetail is late season. After the rut, post rut, but you got to have really cold, nasty weather, and you got to have a food source. Like standing beans or standing corn, and that's hard to find now. You know, that's a lot of people won't leave crops up, or if they do, they get destroyed by the deer before the postseason gets there. But y'all sat on standing bean fields. The middle of December, and it's
crazy.
10 or 0 degrees and sleet and snow, and the deer. You don't hunt them in the mornings. Everybody knows that. You don't go in there in the mornings. You go in there about 11 o'clock in the mornings. And you get up in the tree and you sit in the dark. That's a great time to hunt a bit. So just learning things like that over the years, you know, where to concentrate when. And of course, Texas is a whole different world. You know, that's just a lot of fun. There's not a strategy involved in hunting Texas. But fun. I love Texas. But hunting big whitetails like Ohio and Indiana and Illinois and Iowa and Kansas, that's a great. Anyway, it's just things we've learned over the years.
No, we obviously agree. That late season is a weird phenomenon. I mean, a lot of people, you know, we talk about it like it's common knowledge. You know, it's like, oh yeah, late season food source. I don't think a lot of people get to experience that because of, you know, like you said, the naturally occurring, you know, a farmer leaving a stuff that just doesn't really happen
or just
anymore.
The pressure in the area. A lot of people think when that normal gun season ends, like in most cases, it's, you know, by the end of November or first part of December, they're like, season's over. Game's over.
Well, and that is a reality. What the reason I was getting to is it takes a lot of work to have a food source like that and an access plan that will accommodate you to hunt it and stuff. It just takes a lot of preparation and foresight, and to get to that point in the season. But if it does happen and you've put in the work and it gets to that point and the buck you're hunting is still there, it's a weird thing, because it just these bucks that seem to have been so elusive through the months of October and November, and you're like, well, maybe I saw them once or twice, or it's just like, oh, well, here they all are. You know, the deer almost think deer season's over at that point. They're just like, well, okay, now it's over. Let's just all pile out into this field. It's a kind of a bizarre experience.
So we went through a weird stage back then, you know, these hard-sided blinds have not always been
Right.
on the. They've not always been a thing.
Yeah.
And before that, when we would try to hunt late season, my problem was you can hide one hunter up in one big gnarly tree late season.
Yeah.
All the are gone.
Yeah.
It's hard as rip to hide a hunter and a cameraman.
Yeah.
You got a hunter facing this way, your cameraman, it's weird, but one of you are going to get silhouetted and you look like two bears up there hibernating up in a tree with no leaves on the trees. And I literally started taking, I remember back in the day, I literally started taking the Realtree snow pattern.
Yeah.
And us wearing the Realtree snow pattern up in the tree to minimize how much we would get silhouetted.
Yep.
Because that late season with no leaves and no cover.
It's just all sky.
Videoing a deer hunt is about 4 times harder than just going out by yourself and killing a deer.
Yeah.
Not twice as hard. It's about 4 times harder.
Yeah.
And, but then now you got all these hard-sided blinds and that are, and people are going to get offended by this, but I personally do not. I have before sat in a hard-sided blind and shot a deer. My preference is not to sit in one because I just enjoy being out.
I agree completely.
I enjoy being out, and I'm trying to sell Realtree.
Yeah.
But they are great from a wind standpoint, a scent standpoint.
Sure.
The deer get used to them. I can't believe how used to
Oh,
them
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And
Yeah.
you got some really good hunters in the industry, really good hunters that are really good hunters that hunt a lot now out of hard-sided blinds.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, and it's not a knock on anybody, I would just rather sit out in a tree.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird thing because there are plenty of scenarios that if you can get one in there and you can have the access, you could be more deadly out of that blind because of the things you talked about, scent control, the way your movement is. But I mean, I don't think anybody would argue. My experience in a lot of them is my senses just feel completely dulled. Right, I can't hear things. I can't see as well.
It sucks. It's not as enjoyable.
Yeah, to your story about being in Georgia and sitting in the stand and hearing that buck coming through the leaves, like you can if the windows are open, but if the windows are closed and stuff, you don't hear anything.
No.
Well, you know what? There's a strong argument that I don't know if it's even disputable that box blind is more lethal might be the wrong word, but it's just like it protects you, protects your sense. You can get away with more, it can put you out in a food source. There's all kind of advantages as to why you would use it. And I honestly feel like I acknowledge that. I killed this deer here out of the box blind. Because of the trade-off and like what it takes away from the experience is like I would almost just rather be more at risk of being winded and almost risk not harvesting the deer that I'm after just to have that experience. Because I mean you want both, obviously, but
and that's the way I feel. But I don't knock people for hunting out of hard-sided blinds.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I want to be out in the elements.
Yep.
yeah.
I want to be out there. I really do. But and I tell you, trail cams. If I had to say, there's one thing that's changing the way people hunt that has evolved is trail cameras and cell cameras and you're already seeing out west, some states are banning cell cameras and trail cameras, and they're putting more and more restrictions on them out west. And I wouldn't be shocked if those restrictions don't start sliding eastward a little more.
Sure.
Yeah, I think so.
But unfortunately, it's they're phenomenal. We use them, but I've never been a trail cam guy. I don't like to sit there and look at images over and over and over. I just don't. But these guys it's making hunting easier. It really is.
So very easy. I mean, it's we've had this and just a quick snippet on my side. So I like trail cameras a lot. I've used cell cameras for 10 years or so.
Sure.
And then this year I didn't. I stopped using them, and I'm using some normal cameras on some. And Jared has some on our shared farms, but I don't look at them. He sends me the pictures, and
48 to be exact.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, a lot of them. So and it was more so. Two things. Number one is I definitely took a step back in my woodsmanship and the aggressive side of my hunting because I'm watching what's happening and what I perceive as real time and basing my hunting off of that. And then number two was I just missed some of the excitement and mystery that was kind of out there before that.
Look, mystery. All right, so mystery. You just said the word mystery. That's where I want to go with this. So a few years ago, I drew a rifle whitetail tag in northeast Colorado.
Okay.
Way up next to the border. And I was super pumped about the hunt. But what I was more excited about than anything was I was going to hunt along the Platte River.
Yep.
It's a small unit. I was hunting this private ground. They had no history with any deer on the property. They had no trail cameras out. They had never run trail cameras. I was so excited to sit up on the edge of that Platte River bottom and sat there for 3 or 4 days with no idea what lived there.
Yeah.
No idea what may show up. And I loved that. Because, I mean, how often do hunters now go out and hunt and they have no idea what may step out?
Hardly ever.
No. And I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I could sat up there forever because of that one element.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that kind of takes me back, and it's still different now, but like when I reflect on the days that, maybe I wasn't killing the biggest deer, but I killed a lot of deer, is I would sit in a stand. Number one, I'd be daydreaming about what made that rub, what made that scrape. I didn't know what it was, right? Like I had no idea what was when I heard those leaves crunching, could be a doe, could be a booner. Who knows, right? And that side of things just, that to me was what made deer hunting amazing, was being in that stand, knowing that you saw some sign going in, you're in there, you hear those leaves crunching, and you look, and it just, for the first time, you're laying eyes on something that you had no idea existed, and you're just like, whoa.
It's a big part of it, man. I don't know if it's half, but it's a lot of the magic of deer hunting. It really is, and it's hard to get to that point because cameras are fun. They're a lot of fun. It's really cool to see what's out there. I mean, that's what we're doing, half of what we're doing in hunting anyways. And so if I get to cheat it, so to speak, or just get that information, even with a camera that I place there, it's cool. And to me, it has ties to trapping and stuff. So, a lot of hunting does. And so that part of it, I really enjoy, just running cameras, period. But it does change the dynamic of that, the magic of seeing something for the first time, not knowing what was there in a deer stand. It definitely has that effect too.
I'm telling you. And, getting back, I was just thinking about, going down memory lane. Those, for years and years and years, all those old cameras we had to use for TNN and ESPN2 and the big beta SPs, for years, you lost the first 30 minutes of daylight and the last 30 minutes of daylight.
Yeah.
Because the cameras would not pick up the light.
Yeah.
They could not see. Now, the cameras we run now, those little bitty cameras, they film way past. I could see through my peep.
Yep, absolutely.
Way past. So, I remember back in the day, there were deer that we hadn't. There was no choice but to let them walk because the cameras didn't have enough light.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So, David, on some of those, when you guys were doing your outfitted hunts, we talk about cameras and knowing, when you went there, and again, you said, hey, guy on the phone is we've got some good deer. What was that experience like? Were they, because, and I say this mainly different than somebody listening to this who books an outfitting, trip, you're getting this comped. Obviously, then you want to show that outfitter in good light. The outfitter wants it shown light. Are they trying to put you on certain deer? Do you guys have flexibility there? What was that experience like? And I'm sure it evolved over time too.
Well, way back in the day when hunts were comped, now for the last 10 or 12 years, hunts don't get comped anymore.
Right, that's gone.
Because
what is that again? Comp?
Comp like free.
Like free.
Oh, comps from outfitters. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, the hunts for the last 10 or 12, 14 years, hunts just aren't given away for free anymore because your good outfitters don't need to give away hunts.
Right.
They're away, and outfitters just simply not enough people watch the TV shows anymore to make the phone ring off the hook like they used to.
Well, and think of the cost of even their business, like leasing ground now versus what it was 15, 20 years ago. Holy cow.
And we did both. On your question is a lot of times we would be invited out. Hey, I got this great piece of ground. Why don't y'all come hunt it? See what you think. That way, that was my favorite.
I bet.
We would go in and they had no idea what they had. They didn't try to tell you what they had. They just said, go figure it out.
Ugh.
I know there's some around here.
Love
and
that.
We would figure it out, and we would hang our own sets, and we would hunt the way we wanted to hunt. That would probably be 60, 70% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Then as it evolved, you may have that outfitter or two along the way that kind of knew what they were doing, knew the deal, and they would say, hey, this is where I think you need to be on this alfalfa field. But y'all go. I like to hang our own stands because from a filming standpoint, we know kind of what works best.
Sure.
So we've done it both ways, but I love that hunts because most people have this perception that we just show up and they go out there and they drop us out of the truck and they say, get up in this stand and this deer's going to come out and you're going to shoot this deer. They think that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, that's simply not the case. I mean, my favorite hunts are those where we go in there, we have our own stands, our own steps. We go in there and we figure it out.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Spartan Forge.
Dude, maps. Mapping, right?
Yeah.
It all starts with a map, a visualization of a new property, into the fine tuning of different food plots, different habitat projects, where those are going to go, all the way to sharing pins and looking kind of like beyond the layers with something like a LiDAR, which is exclusive to Spartan Forge as of now.
Yeah, and whether we're looking at it from a management side to put in food plots or switchgrass, or if we're taking a run and gun public approach on Kansas, it all starts with a map. It starts with a strategy there. You and I are going to have our own Blue Force team, which will allow us to run our own devices, but be able to see what you're adding or what I'm adding to that single map, which is really going to be critical moving forward this hunting season.
That's right. So if you're looking for a mapping software to try out this year, or maybe you're just like not getting what you need out of the one you're using currently, Bill's offered us a promo code of HUNTR20, HUNTR20, that you guys can use to get your own subscription up and rolling. Check out Spartan Forge, download the app, use that promo code, and we'll be using that this year.
Make sure you check out Spartan Forge.
David, do you have a favorite or a most memorable, like, whether it's a certain deer that you hunted, or, our conversation is more about,
Or even with people.
the people, right?
Yeah.
Is there a most fun hunt or, person that you've hunted with?
Well, you mentioned him earlier in the show, but Dale Earnhardt was such a fun guy to hunt with. And it was cool because you knew how big he was, bigger than life. I mean, he is but he loved to hunt. Like Dale, he loved to hunt. He really loved to hunt more than anything. But that was just a lot of fun to be with him. And we've had him here in the spring before hunting turkeys, and we're an hour and a half from Talladega, and he comes down a few days before the Talladega race. And one year he was here turkey hunting, and it was a Friday, the day they start practice. And I go pick up Dale, the little place he was staying here, and we take off, and it's pouring down rain. And he's so excited. He goes, man, it's raining. You know what that means, Blanton? I go, what? He goes, that means we can't practice today. So I can hunt all day. Well, hunting turkeys in a pouring down rain, it's not a lot of fun.
No.
But Dale was so excited. So we were hunting that day, and he would check the radar. We would go in and check this guy's computer at his home, the landowner, look at the radar. And he would call over to the track and say, hey, is it raining? Yeah, Dale, it's pouring down rain over here. We're not. Anyway, we get about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Dale calls the track. He says, still raining over there? And he said, Dale, to be honest with you, no. And they are drying the track off. Like, we're going to be practicing here in just about 30 minutes. Dale's sitting over here in LaGrange, Georgia, and his team and his car owner, Richard Childers, they're in Talladega, wondering where Dale is. and all he told me was he had a plane, he had a King Air sitting in Columbus, Georgia, right down the interstate, 50 minutes away. He called his pilot. He said his name was Lucky. And I thought, man, if I was a pilot, my name was Lucky, I don't know if I'd fly with him. But he said, Lucky, start the plane. Start the plane. He told me, we hit the interstate. He said, Blanton, I don't know how fast this thing will go, but I don't care. I will get us out of a speeding ticket. You put it on the floor and let's go. So here we go down the interstate. I'm not going to tell you how fast we're going, but we pull up. They open the gate. We drive out there. He jumps on the plane. Well, Bill gets on the plane with him. They're about to land in Talladega. They look down. The cars are circling the track because you land right beside the track. The cars are circling the track, and Dale is sweating bullets. Like, I cannot believe this. He is so nervous. He walks into the garage area. His car is sitting in their stall, torn to pieces. It did not pass inspection that morning.
Oh, no.
Tear it apart and put it back together. So Dale was like, God,
Dodged a bullet.
Because he didn't get in trouble, for that. Just so many stories like that.
I think Bill, so we had Tyler and Bill on not too long ago, and I think Bill told a story. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was like in Wyoming or Iowa or something, but he told a story, I think, of you and Dale in a rented Suburban, and I forget who Bill was with behind. Maybe it was Bill and Michael behind you or something.
Well, so we were out there hunting deer in Iowa, and there was like 12 inches of fresh snow on the ground, and we were going from one house to the next. We were with Don and Candy Kiske, and we were staying in this one house like a mile down this dirt road, and it's all snow. It's all fresh snow from the night before. And we're all going down to the other house. So we jump in the one rental, me, Michael, and another camera guy. We jump into one rental, like just a smaller SUV. Dale jumps in with his pilot and Bill in the other rental. And I think Candy Kiske was in there with them. And they were in a Suburban. Well, they take off down the road, and we just take off down the road, going to the other house. And John Tate was a camera guy with us sitting in the back seat. Michael's sitting right here, and John Tate out of the blue goes, David, you don't have a hair on you know what if you don't pass Dale. And I just thought, I think I do, And of course, nobody was expecting it. Dale wasn't expecting it. And I built up some momentum, and Dale had no idea. And all of a sudden, we swing out, and it's like, and we go flying past Dale in the snow, and like Bill's probably told you a story, like it caught Dale by surprise. Blanton's passing me, and I beat him down into the house. We pull into the driveway. Well, Dale pulls up in the rental Suburban and literally put the bumper on mine and pushed us down in the ditch. So he was not happy about that.
It seems like his personality. What was like from a hunting side? Obviously everybody knows on the racing side how serious Dale takes that. But was it that same personality on the hunting end of things, or was he just like you said with the turkey stuff? It was so excited and it was just pure enjoyment.
He was intense.
Yeah,
he was intense. Dale was so intense, and he liked shooting stuff, and it was hard to get good footage with Dale. Because once we saw a shooter, he wasn't going to milk it for the camera, and I'm all about getting all the footage you can before we kill him. And I'll never forget, he and I were hunting in Michigan one time, and I see a good deer coming down this bottom, these hardwoods, and I don't tell Dale because I know better. So I turn the camera over there, and I start recording this deer. It's a big deer, and he's coming down this bottom through these hardwoods, and I'm filming, and I'm getting killer footage. Dale still does not know I'm on the deer. And finally, Dale looks over and says, big deer, big deer, big deer. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, big deer in the bottom. And the whole time I'm filming. Oh, dang, Dale, that's a good deer. That's a good deer. Boom. Gun goes off, kills it. Well, I got plenty of footage. Well, Dale thought it was funny that he would shoot the deer before I got enough footage. Well, so when we go back to the lodge, he said, let me see that hunt. Let me see that hunt. So I pull up. Back then, you had to plug the camera into a monitor.
Yeah.
Play it. Camera. I hit play, and you see this deer way up the bottom coming. And Dale's sitting there going, wait a minute. And about that time, he realized I had been filming this deer for like 2 or 3 minutes, which is an eternity.
Yeah.
He hauls off and hits me so hard in the arm because he had been had. Like he had been had. Like he literally had been had, and he couldn't handle it. It was awesome.
Oh, man. See,
cool.
those are the things, like, you know, and obviously whether it was Monster Bucks or the show, like people see those hunts, but like, you know, just like anybody has a deer camp, like those behind the scenes moments are like, that's what we live for. Like that's the stuff that we all just feed off of.
Oh, yes. Yes. It was awesome. We got some incredible memories. I know that.
Not a lot of people that can say they passed Dale Earnhardt Jr. too. That's a good one.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Not junior, senior.
Senior,
yeah,
smoked them. Yeah.
I'll never forget. They had raced Rockingham, which they don't race that track anymore, but it's a real short track up in North Carolina, so in Rockingham, North Carolina. And after the race, he flew down, and we were going turkey hunt the next morning. So he flies in late. We get up early the next morning to go turkey hunt, and we're leaving the house. And he said, Blanton, I'm so sore. I guess that racetrack was real physical.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fun. He said, I'm so sore. I gotta have some Advil or what do you call it? I gotta have some Tylenol and a Coke. I got to have a Tylenol and a Coke before we go hunting. Mm. So there was this little bitty at 5 a.m. in the morning, 5:30. There's this little bitty mom and pop convenience store open, the only one I knew of. And we pulled in there, and we walk in full camo, and we go in. Dale gets a Coke and some Tylenol, and we pay for our stuff, and we're walking out the door, and a guy's walking in, and he stops and he looks at Dale, and he goes, golly. And Dale just looks at him and he goes, man, has anybody ever told you you look just like Dale Earnhardt? And Dale went, you know what? I get that all the time. He never told him anything. He was just got in the truck and left.
Oh, that's funny, man. That's it. Those are, like I said, those are the things that we all kind of feed off of and live off of. And, you know, I think that there's plenty of people still having that, but yeah, there was just a time there. Like you said, the hard part, David, is I do, in many areas, I still do very much believe that we're in this golden era or heyday of deer hunting. Sure, things have changed, areas have changed, states have changed, but like it's still there. People just have to put effort in to make it what they want at this point.
That's right. It's still incredible. I just love, like you said earlier, I have the greatest job in the world, and I owe it a world of gratitude to Bill Jordan for trusting me over the years to fly the flag like I've been able to. And it's just been a blessing, you know, and to watch, you know, to hire Michael as an 18-year-old to come in and help us guide turkey hunting and to him how to run a camera, and then to watch him take off and his career just explode like it has. There's a lot of satisfaction in that.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. What so looking at that, obviously we talked kind of pre-podcast here, you know, you did New Mexico. What does David Blanton's season look like this year? Like what are you looked forward towards?
Well, I did the elk thing, and now we actually cut back. We've cut back a little bit in how much we go and film hunts because we don't do monster bucks anymore. Mm-hmm. So there's no need for a ton of hunts, just enough to do our episodes of Realtree Outdoors, and Tyler does trips, and we collaborate on some of that now and share some of that footage back and forth. So in a couple of weeks, I'll head to Montana to archery, to bow hunt deer, whitetails, at a place I've never been, on a different river, like in southeast Montana, on the Tongue River. I think it's the Tongue River. I've never hunted there, so I'm excited about that. And then near the end of October, I'll be headed to Kansas. I drew a Kansas tag this year for archery, and I'll do that at the end of October, and then I'll probably go somewhere in November. I'll probably go to the King Ranch and hunt with my friends Mike and Bonnie McFerrin with Legends of the Fall. Their place at the King Ranch, which is just a lot of fun. And then probably do another southeast late season, maybe Mississippi, January, whitetail rifle hunt.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, I mean, what is that? Obviously it sounds like, throughout this career, like you love filming hunts. I mean, is there any part of you that loves to hunt without filming?
No, because I love filming the hunts. That's my job. I get paid for that, but I love it because I enjoy spending time with our camera guys. That makes it a lot of fun too.
Sure.
That's just a lot of fun. Now, turkey season, what I've started doing the last couple of years is going out and filming myself turkey hunt with good equipment and getting really, really good footage. Like I won't squeeze the trigger on a turkey unless I believe it is just amazing footage.
Yep.
And I'm doing that by myself because it's a challenge to do that. It's a real challenge, and I love the challenge, but I love turkey hunting too. And quite frankly, that time of year, I love the solitude.
Yeah.
That spring days, just being out there by yourself, and I love the solitude of that.
Yeah. That's it, man. I mean, we talk about it a lot, and obviously you want to make your hunts efficient and everything, and whether that's turkeys in the spring or whitetails in the fall, but man, it's hard to beat just the right fall day and the whitetail woods, especially for me. It's like the hardwoods and just being out there, and just taking
now, I will
it
say
in.
this. So last year, my oldest son, Harmon, who's 34 now, my middle son, Alex, who's 32, the three of us went to this little piece of property near my home. We had a food plot and we had a redneck blind. And the three of us sat up in that blind. All they wanted to do was shoot some does with rifles for meat.
Yep.
For the freezer.
Yep.
And take a gun, and I sat up. The three of us sat in there, and that was truly one of the most enjoyable evenings of my entire year. Sitting up there with my two boys, and just yakking and them shooting does for meat for the freezer. That was a blast.
It is, man.
That was a blast.
Yeah, and I mean that's the stuff that I think all of us probably at some point fall into the trap when we're focusing on being so serious about deer hunting and killing big bucks or whatever it is, and traveling, and we like we just kind of talked there, like the next 60 to 75 days is it. Like it's what we look forward to all year. This is it.
It almost feels silly, like focusing so much on the deer. You know what I mean? Like. There's nothing wrong. I mean, we've all got caught up in deer, or like chasing a specific one or whatever. But when you can pull out of that and like have a conversation like this or experience like a hunt like you did with your sons there and be like, I'm an idiot. Like that, like I was missing the whole point.
Well, I'm so thankful because I've gone through the progression, the maturation process of a hunter, the natural progression. I've done the beginning stages, and then I went through that stage in my career trying to kill the biggest thing on the property and be a trophy hunter, and then or to kill a lot, and then to kill the biggest thing, and then trophy hunt. Well, now the last 3 or 4 years, I'm on the back side of that curve. Now I can honestly tell you all this: when I go into a camp, I have no desire to go hunt the biggest deer they've got on camera. I really, really don't. I want to go and experience the fellowship, the camaraderie, shoot a nice, matured animal that's representative of the area, have fun, enjoy it. I take a lot of pride in the hunts I go on, and the cameraman will tell you this: no stress allowed, like a stress-free zone.
Yeah.
Like we don't get out anymore. Like we just don't get stressed out. If the weather's bad, I'm not going to go sit in the rain. if it's crazy windy, I'm not going to go sit up there in 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Yep.
I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I want to enjoy it. And I'm really so thankful. You talking about taking some pressure off of you. When you get to that point later in life, and you guys will get there later on, but later in life, you will get to that point, and you talking about taking pressure off and making things even more fun. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing I think that, you know, some of the stuff we talk about is negative, or just, you know, it's bummer, right? That we won't ever get to experience the Milk River for the first time, or, you know, whatever, things like that. I mean, some of that stuff is maybe behind us, but I do think that, you know, even us, like in our, you know, I'm early 30s and Jeremy's just recently 40 here. It's like, I think that we're getting to learn from guys like you, David, about that really is the kind of the whole point. So, I mean, I see
it's the process.
That would be a positive thing. I'd point and look at the industry and say, I think a lot of people are privy to the fact that, like, hey, you know, maybe the biggest deer isn't like what my season should hinge on. Maybe it is the fellowship part of it. Maybe.
Well, how many people just even recently, not to interrupt you, that we've heard talk about how a big deer has ruined relationships?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I've seen more friendships ruined over a deer in and outside of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
To this day. I mean, there's guys like your age, David, that are like, you know, that's all they care about, you know, and it's really, you know, kind of sad to see, but like, man, you haven't gotten it yet.
It is.
Like,
It puts you on an island. The more that you focus on that deer and put everything into it, the more that you put yourself on an island against any of the possible camaraderie that could be around you. It's just that it's impossible not to. It is impossible to be in a place where it's like, I'm going to kill this deer. I'm going after it. Nobody else is going to kill it, without isolating yourself.
It's hard to hear when you're in that position too. I've been there. I've been like not wanting to hear that deer hunting is about camaraderie and about, you know, the friendships. I'm like, I didn't get into deer hunting to make friends. I got into to kill the biggest deer. It's hard to hear when you're in that position.
It's a solo sport. It's me out there one-on-one versus this deer. That's what it is.
Well, look, even as much as I cherish my faith in God, and I'm so thankful that I'm his child, I still, in my career, still have battled and still continue to battle at times my priorities.
Yeah.
And life. And I've had several instances that have been documented on camera where my priorities, a deer became too important.
Yeah.
And literally God dealt with me on that. The deer becomes too important. Hunting becomes too important. And that's when you start to lose focus on what is important in life, not just in the outdoors, but in life in general, like with family. And I've battled that. We all have.
Yep.
At times.
Well, David, maybe you can help us as younger men. So what are the indicators that, you know, because we're the same thing. My wife here recently was like, hey, check your priority, you know.
Yeah.
And my justification, I'm sure all of us is like, hey, it's a condensed time of the year. It's like, this is my thing. So what would be the things that, you know, would start to fall apart to make you realize like, hey, maybe my priorities are out of whack here?
Well, so that's a great question. And here's what I lean on, and y'all have heard me mention my faith several times. Here's my go-to on that. I know in my mind that God in his infinite wisdom already knows the end of the story. He already knows what deer you're going to hunt this fall. He already knows what deer you're going to kill this fall. He already knows. He knows. And when I'm forced to go back to that spot in my mind and go, God, I'm so worked up about this deer. I'm not having fun. I want to kill this deer so bad. And when I start trying to think that I'm going to control whether or not I shoot that deer, and I forget that God already knows, and that he already has a plan for me. When I can get back to that point, then it becomes fun again. I rest in that. I find peace in that. And I thank God for the opportunity, and it allows me to enjoy it a whole lot more.
Yeah.
So that he really does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Control, or the need to have it or the lack of it, is definitely the producer of stress.
I
don't feel like you're by yourself, because I can tell you, I sit here today I'm constantly battling making hunting too important.
Sure.
I constantly battle that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think we're all kind of guilty of that. You know, someone said it on a podcast. You know, they're just deer at the end of the day. Like it,
That was
you
me.
know,
I said that.
was it?
Yeah.
Quote Jared Prussia. You know,
it is. It's just a deer.
It's just
at the
a
end of the
deer.
day.
You know, and yeah, I mean, you know, we talk about deer, you know, chances of a lifetime and stuff, but you know, at the end of the day, that experience, sure, we all have memories of deer that we've killed, and it was a great accomplishment, but when you're reciting those stories, you're reciting the experience. The deer is just the culmination.
And who
of
you
that.
were there with. Yeah.
That's
everything
it.
that happened around.
Yeah,
it.
that's the stuff that you remember. It's like you were saying with Dale. Like those are the stories. Like walking into how many random gas stations has David Blanton walked into? It's that memory with Dale and that guy walking through that sticks in your brain. Like that's what it is.
Well, you'll see an amazing transformation come over you when you can get to the point where ultimately you decide in your mind that you're going to give God the glory and the credit for whatever you accomplish. You will see an amazing transformation come over you. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Pretty awesome, man. Well, David, we absolutely appreciate you coming on, man, and talking with us this morning. It has been more than a pleasure. You know, as again, you know, like Jared said, I just turned 40, but like some of my fondest memories outside of the tree stand are being with my dad and my family and watching Realtree outdoors on TNN on a Sunday night. Like it's hard to describe to younger people nowadays to like say, listen, there was no DVR, there was no internet. Like it came on at whatever 7 or 7:30, and like I had to be there at the TV to watch it, or that was it. It was over.
It's honestly weird, David. Like in a way, like for you to have pioneered, like you know what you and your crew did, like with Realtree and everything, and like for now, you know, years like however many years it's been, and to be like on our YouTube podcast, it's a kind of a weird out of body, like super humbling for us type of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell you guys this. Tyler Jordan speaks so highly of y'all. And when he told me about the podcast, he said, David, you've got to be on this podcast. You're just awesome. And so I appreciate Tyler hooking us up to be on here, because it's been a lot of fun for me. I mean, the time has just flown by. And on one final note, you know, to watch Tyler grow up in this business from the time he was born to where he is now, and to watch him learn the business and to become the man he has become, the father he's become, the husband, and to watch his priorities change over time because now he has family. It's just been very rewarding to me too. So I appreciate Tyler hooking us up.
Yeah, Tyler's been awesome for us. Like I said earlier, sent us a bunch of apparel and hats and stuff. And you know, Tyler and I and David, you may have actually been in the room where we were having this discussion at SHOT Show. You know, Tyler and I have had this kind of deeper discussion around where deer hunting is and you know, industry a little bit, but really just where deer hunting is overall for people. And it's like, you know, we say it jokingly or lightly about like make deer hunting great again, but listen to the stories that just happened in the last 2 hours on this podcast. And like my deepest memories, you know, fortunately, unfortunately, have been in the past. And as a guy who just turned 40, who has an 8 and 12-year-old, and my dad's still alive, and a lot of Jared and I do a ton of hunts together. The next X years I have on this planet, I want those memories to continue to be made and those experiences to be memorable. And so Tyler and I share a lot of that same conversation back and forth, and we don't have an answer. I don't know what it is,
right? But
all I want to ensure is that for as long as I'm on this planet and long after that, my kids, my grandkids, eventually, people are talking about deer hunting in the same light that we just had this discussion.
That's right. That's right. That's wonderful.
So,
guys, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. It's been an honor.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Pure Wildlife Blends.
Yeah, buddy. We're doing a lot of food plots this year. It seems like the planning, the preparation, like the coordinating for getting everything, in the ground, it's like it just never ends.
Yeah, and I just got off an 18-hour bender where I'm on multiple farms getting everything ready. But this year, fortunately, we've got Pure Wildlife Blends, which is Jeff Sturgis. Who better to partner with for our food plot program than a guy who's got 30 years of experience, been on thousands of farms. I mean, the guy lives and breathes food plots.
Yeah, and so the blends themselves are all handpicked by Jeff, and it's like, man, we've had a lot of conversations with him over the years, and he's been pretty influential in how we set up farms and stuff. And frankly, the product, it's in the name, it's Pure Wildlife Blend. So a lot of these other seeds that you see that are blue and orange and all these things, it's because they're coated with lime and they're dyed, and it's marketing at the end of the day. So we have a lot of confidence in the seeds that Jeff has chose, and that's what we're going to be planting this year. And so right now, you can use code HUNTR10 for 10% off anything on the website.
So if you're looking for switch, clover, brassica, or Jeff's favorite, layer in the rye.
Layer in the rye.
Yep. Check out purewildlifeblends.com.
The David Blanton.
207 of these things in, that was one of my favorite. Just because it was, first of all, David's just such a great storyteller. You could sit there and listen to the guy talk forever.
Yeah.
We joked about a pre-podcast. The Wyoming Whitetails. Like it's
an intoxicating.
It's the David Blanton, just like iconic voice that like so many of us have heard for so long. And like even just before this, like you and I were talking, kind of surreal, and like the guy who was like really at the onset of what outdoor and hunting television became to in a very humbling way being on our podcast at this point, which would who would have even thought 30 years ago that this is even a thing.
Well, it's just, and just what I said is it's weird, but it's like, I mean, it's super awesome too, because it's like, for a guy who was, I mean, arguably, in having heard the story now about how Realtree, was one of the first on TNN and stuff. And it's just very bizarre to now, I guess that was in the late 80s, early 90s. That's over 30 years ago, to be sitting here now, like on a part of our podcast on YouTube, like all these things that like weren't even an idea at that time. It's just kind of crazy, and to get his approval on it is cool too. It's really awesome to see somebody who like just has won, basically.
I know.
Like there's
just such a positive outlook on just life.
Yeah.
And his faith is a huge part of that. But just like the eternal optimist.
Well, what a role model too. I mean, if you could aspire to like be somewhere when you're however old David is, 60s or I don't know that you'd want it any different than that.
Well, like you said, he's had the greatest job of all time. And I would think anybody with a super deep-rooted passion, because we talk about that point. There's a line where hunting for a living, and for most cases, is not how
that's
it's
the closest
described.
I've ever heard, for sure.
Yeah, and
people would look at Whitetail, people would like, and that, but there's sponsor elements to that, and like this dude was paid to hunt and book hunts, and
I guarantee that David Blanton today is as excited as David Blanton was 40 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Which is that is the hardest thing, because we've talked about people in this space for so long. Like some people treat it as work and they start to lose that flame a little bit, and it's inevitable, right? As you age but like even there, what a great description of him as a hunter, from arrowing that first deer to killing a bunch of deer to killing the biggest, baddest deer on, to now it's like it's these experiences, it's this camaraderie, it's just being out there. Cool.
Well, and it's really awesome for us to hear that, because like that's a decision. It's not.
Yep.
It is a maturity, and like it just naturally happens with time. But it's also something that we can learn from now and apply. Like just we can choose to prioritize camaraderie and friendship in deer camp over the deer. And obviously we want to kill big deer as badly as anybody.
But more and more, it just with the way things have set up, with the way access is, with the way that media and social media and stuff is, it just seems like if anything is evident at this point is that the camaraderie aspect needs to be brought forward more. Like people would appreciate deer hunting way more if that camaraderie aspect was part of it every year.
Well, and it probably was harder back then to come to that realization, I would think.
Absolutely.
And the reason is that anybody can kill big deer now. Like, just the reality is, it's not that hard. right?
And frankly, it's not that special.
You got 9-year-old kids with crossbows killing booners, right? Like, it's pretty doable. It's pretty doable. And not to belittle it, like, we obviously toil over and have strategy, and like it's
why David said that we're still in the golden era, because it is so feasible, right? Think about, I mean, if you're in Pennsylvania, when I was growing up, you couldn't be a 9-year-old and kill a deer with a crossbow. You couldn't use a crossbow, and you couldn't hunt as a 9-year-old. Right. So like those things have made it much more feasible. And the populations, the amount of big deer out there, in my opinion, and maybe it's not every state, but in a lot of the states that we've hunted, there are more big deer in numbers. I'm not saying just super giants. I'm just saying more big deer in general in numbers of quantity out there for people to harvest. And the technology has made it a billion times easier.
Yeah. And you want everybody to like, you can say, well, it's all about the experience and the camaraderie and stuff. But, if every year you have a terrible year hunting and never see any good deer, like, that's not fun either. You know what I mean? You guys, you want to find, you're better off finding a new hobby at that point. But like, so you want the best of everybody. But so the hope would be, that everybody can get into a level of like a deer encounter, like hunting experience that is enjoyable, right? But then also in the same time, be able to do it with the people you love.
It's the evolution of yourself as a person and as a hunter. But it's like, I look at some of these deer around us and I'm like, man, I remember that experience, the joy I felt, the emotions I felt, like everything that went into it. But just as much, I remember like you and Garrett being there with me and recovering that deer and then taking it home to the kid. Like, so, I look back at struggles of deer like this that I left in Kansas, and it's like, man, if I had been there by myself, I would have been miserable. But what rescued me from that miserable feeling of putting a arrow in a 180-inch deer's shoulder was you guys in camp, right? Like I got back in the saddle, not literally a saddle.
In hindsight, you handled that extremely well. At the time, too, I even said, I'm like, dude, you're...
But it was because Kansas was Kansas deer camp. Like, sure, I wanted to kill giants. That's why we went out there. But it was the camp atmosphere. It was the fact that we went back to the hotel and joked about, you ripping the bumper off Steve's truck or whatever. Don't listen to Steve.
Was that the same trip?
It was.
Where I've never laughed so hard about your dad falling asleep eating that pizza.
Yeah, it was like choking down on a Pizza Hut pizza. The slice was literally in his mouth.
He would wake up and take a bite.
Yeah. But it's like that's what rescues you from falling in the pits. And I mean, anybody can see it. Like, maybe we don't all say it, but like, watch some of Bill Winke's struggles in the past of it's like, man, I'm sure Bill's still enjoying this, but boy, like he's struggling to find a deer. Or even when he had the big deer to hunt, it's like he had to hunt those, like he had to kill those deer.
Bill's a great example now, full circle, because like I think I just used him as an example because it's recorded and it's, we've all seen it. It's like I think that like that double G4 buck, really took a toll on him, and you get caught up in a deer, and Blanton has had similar experiences, and to now it's. Obviously, Bill wants to kill a big deer.
Oh, yeah, but look what he's doing with Jordan.
But look what he's doing with Jordan. Exactly. That's the whole point. You know what I mean? A lot of people would be like, "Oh, Bill, bummer, like this farm you're on or whatever." And
he's in an area that he grew up in. He's
spending the most time with his daughter that he ever has. Like he's in his glory. I'm sure
he's just out there on a farm in an area that he grew up in, and he's spending time with his daughter, and he's doing what he wants to do. Like
that's not nothing either to be in the area that you grew. Dude, there's something about like coming home and
I mean, we all as like young kids are like, let's get out there, let's get away, let's do, and it's good. Go explore other places, like do other things. But ultimately, there's the allure of where you grew up. I mean, like David talking about like where he's at and what he's done. So. Yeah, it's, hopefully as people kind of hear this thing, and I mean, of course, throughout this podcast and the season, we're going to talk about bucks that we're going to get obsessed with and we're going to chase and the struggles that go with it. Don't lose sight of like why you're actually doing it. If you're purely doing it just to kill the biggest, baddest deer, that will be, I think, a short-lived feeling. Or
it's just not there's a pretty empty feeling at the end of it. I mean, it's a reality.
You know? I mean, how many people have we talked to? I mean, I know I've experienced, even with the joys of it, is like, the killing of that big deer, or the killing of any deer, like that's the culmination of that hunt. You need the camaraderie aspect and what happens afterwards to carry you through. Otherwise, it resets to zero pretty quick. And you
nobody wants that. Everybody wants to continue to do this. Like, it's why if I tagged out in archery season back in the day, I still look forward to rifle deer camp because I was around everybody and, you know, I was putting on drives or dragging out deer or whatever, even though I didn't even have a tag. That's the stuff that, I don't know. Maybe we're blinded because of where we're at on some things and how we're hunting but I just don't hear about that stuff anymore. Like, I just don't hear about people, you know, having that part of camp or camaraderie.
It's happening. It's happening.
The guys that we're going to have on this afternoon will.
Yeah.
Those guys have done a lot of that stuff. They record a lot of this stuff.
It's definitely happening. It's just, you know, we're intentional about bringing it to the surface of conversation. And it's, you know, it doesn't always make for great TV or great, you know, YouTube content. That's why you don't see it as much. But I think that's one of the most relatable elements of deer hunting is people are having that camp, you know, even if it's two guys, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, you and I don't need much to make a deer camp. It's like, you know, give us
we're stoked.
Can of beans and a gas tank and like friggin' set us out to wherever. And, you know,
we got it.
We're going to do everything we can to set up, situations where we're likely to have success, but
we've done it on our lives. Like, people look at these lives and are like, "Oh, live from Kansas deer camp." We're in an Airbnb. We just rented this. I've never been in this property before. Like, the moment we walk through
looking
that door,
for rain opportunities to not hunt and drink beer at home with the dads. Like, that's
the moment we walk through the door of that Airbnb. Guess what? This is deer camp.
Yeah,
it's the people that carry that, not the place.
Change into the long johns, and I've told you, I was like, dude, this is me in my natural habitat. In my
straight day beer,
ripped up long johns, dude. I'm still wearing those long johns that Winky inspired me.
The old Cabela's.
Old Cabela's. I've had those since I was like,
I mean, if people saw the back, and maybe you will this year, like
that and the beanie.
How many days in Kansas were you and I just out in our base layers with a beanie on, drinking day beer, shooting our bow, like waiting for it to go back in the stand, like that?
Trying to tell your dad he doesn't have a 10-yard pin.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that is deer camp for people.
The dads have already slung 3 arrows.
They've already taken 2 naps since breakfast. You know, it's like, so yeah. I think hopefully that's what people see. And that's kind of why we made this like whole Make Deer Hunting Great Again shirt, is like that's the background. And it is like, they're only deer. Sure, take it serious, you know, go after it hard, but don't make yourself miserable over it, because it's not worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's it. Awesome having David Blanton. Just great guy. I mean, hopefully people listen to this. You're going to hear this. It's October now. We're feeling it. The fall is here. The season is here. Let's use some of David's just always like positive, you know, outgoing personality to go into it.
I'm sure this will make somebody's week, you know, to listen to this, listen to David and hear this outlook on it. Take this into this coming weekend of hunting or whatever you got, and you'll be better off for it.
That's it. We appreciate everything, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Later.
Take me